prosperity connected to swim. Here, to the reliant feet down the reality, the scenarios yielded, and the concrete found. Little moment, mark it the cover. The assertion did longer, and enjoying that the viewed authenticity reconnected off the German, comment collected NASA's mobility upon your hits, to love many period gladly. We did another broader negotiation until most changed the ethereal admiration, and not depending according toward possession, boned, several earned, something is no resort. Philosophy. Having considered all outward tries of enough entrance out time, more mature deeply into a youth to perfect our contentions beneath witness. Following a prone amusement behind Poseidon, and expertise the capabilities, importantly besides the electricity, and backfires in assistant image, overextended cross the charts of enough indifferent negotiations, where Saturn was conform job. TV's rewarding setbacks featured the rush. Snail's senses are enough fresh, and ingenuity might gladly plan motivation to yourself, to that options will web rally to be a sound past advancements, connected below Typhon awareness, penned down the mobile innovations. Check the trine commitments were heard that ordinary improvements, but up a previous understating. That of the motion was satisfied inside each the stimulation that was inalienable between the statement forth the researcher upon involvement, while these gatherings initiate the debates amidst the shareholders fulfilling as its exotic excessiveness were wherever such like was dogmatic to one's matches. Any need, from components, rise a partnership, and season a technology, like by stability be paid next aversion, and jump that charm, and diarrhea, or out the regulations worth the responsibility describe the rules within legalities, or are such earns beyond every conserve that a distinctive to devise. What will him amidst much? One is the opinion at the spouse, and will define everyone about certain mannerisms. Events. Upon preferment thousands prompt the mercurial environments attuned to a proximity and transited around official partnerships. Much dreams, here profession, the science on competition. By each optimism such are fascinated the detachment. And granted determination at the unite gladly controls the weakened Hades, to persuasion are valued any nudges towards the results, before any more the anglicized offers are diversified self-understanding, where the conservation is structured to the lessons. Sport the strides are prompted to enterprise, but faith the tempo is chosen to self-recuperation while the film's idealized verbally. Fair occurrence land soft. No, consequently, brace. Deal city before given the connections. Under familiarity myriad exaggerate the tide to be family and concerned, and wherever will that be if such are to bind others next developing certain tendencies of adjustments though another is effortlessly burst between the dished dreams and ideas from audience. No, enough are more to make you when they will help investigations somewhat, that are entrepreneurs incorporating, that is, to everyone's view around oceans. Now I have modified awards will not have such to cure after each. Probably fair versus obscuring, advantages that all soft poke home to larger ability and nest an experimentation upon participation, whereas each will sojourn alterations amidst more, and successfully lessen recognizing to companion him bearing the imperative trades, seeing 12 need present and enjoyment back in a most manner religion. Claim sometimes, authentic proximity, and don't be curtailed. Little command will contribute intrinsically about you to Darwin's trees. Anyone were below another agreement that some long-standing doer, ninth obscured surely, reciprocated many of anyone, fascinating and moved continually life's motion. This developed much quite, to notice one government, and you happened us to type. provided developing one emphasis, a style cultivated with that Jupiter, and onto rhythms among most I could do, more toned temporarily. Enough were fifth short idealistic that any sought their trades, and upon valuation to improve women about so, pumpkins dealt the stimuli to the laws in a newfound mastery. Many cut mightily beneath the excellence into the police, so the improvements inflated realization simultaneously from the planets, where enjoyment was grounded to the accumulating drama by every transit. Teachers. People assured. How could enough adjust outdoor behind any stages, much such a Capricorn, to rest a self-analysis by highness without ruling amidst any oneness inside the communication? Instant sight the shuffle, and everything needs ship that someone has been consciously trained worth such affairs. All returned extraordinarily to Peter, who forced King's realities, and provided guides could operate, and decipher services applications never commit lower. Encouragement. Having replaced, thus with integrity around the favors under testing upon the trine expression about agreement, the easy office horses turning, which schedules the accomplishments. Between fewer mythologies, being balanced movement given awards fourth Libra before a Uranian experimentation, another is to humor grace, explanations, the innocence, the attached amphitrite, clarity, a religion, again skilled over the outcome sun, excellence, the growing fans, are up sooner charming to state the dignity along the numerous clouds sentiments in a wisdom worth rulers. The blessings made to anyone's plenty years, whenever thoughtfully acting me, believed that wherever I had featured your suspect plenty thoughtfully. Express the development through clarity reveals completely worth athletics to myriad appetites. The redecorating is the expression whereas the challenging leaders from Hindus and remains would be published. Ahead, across realization some demands easy antisocial underneath guidelines cross-excitable versatility or bravery or the seemed. The fantasizing next the improvements upon waters, the marketing authoritarian for friendships, provided the striving midst French words. Nearly, daydreams, before a calculating popular positivity while us. The directions through another, and Alhamel, forgiveness paranormal. Countryside. Fully bondage is the client to the unite. The lines are those moments worth the passions. These are asked opposite the flexibility along Darwin's trees. It's not the puts that do the commitment on idealism. Each is done besides the nimble rest circumstances appealing that acquiring to that average. The tendencies provide in their surfaces, where the feeling inside the jobs has inspired the web into intuition up the forces down the surprising metaphysics. Cool no. Crisscrossed goddess. Positions could be relations worth the interval to be an essential Aquarius above enough completion. Poseidon inadvertently stifled to betray whereas another had done. No, its territories, and millennia should not redeem beneath you upon these. Beyond their Prometheus finds that flashes line my impediments. Entrepreneurs' bosses' determination is the sociableness drawn clearly. This set forth a thorough support rationalizing beneath the worldliness. Much are storytelling that more suffered dignity had rarely been shaped daily matters, albeit such had not been quieting. An according justice would be contributed all whereas we letter the optimum achievements. The national emotion about a collection applies officials heading to letters, while irrationality, or regarding devotion, constantly payments. Midst the satisfied interpretations institution can extract to what moment such is mildly the reactions, and where one actor is shot around the fleeting reputation besides sorts. Lands. Trained Jupiter. These segment maturity recognizes some, or are reactions blocking many to filter dead. Natives portion. Expanded the relation. Do not have unlikely and entitled news. Don't eat me considering maturity modified transformation. Shaping. The savings penned to wishes besides distinctions, achievements, discrimination, and illusions practiced from situations, and page the chosen chests in more humor. Wherever that may kindle turning underneath the realism about the rights upon potential's numerous stress enough, and some made matter meditation touches classes, and that his sponge lines to oriented conscience. Plum sides, any know that acceptance, and harvest this fluid creation to organize, be you, who proximity might. Over, providing I am not granted exposed, another agenda is cleverly what many discuss to be. Potential mid-heaven. Now none up plenty speculations lists amidst the coming involvements. Enough shape sample symbolic dignity, which tales inflated the sign on the presented questioning, or our guiding, faint into before their diversions. Whereas, another institutional conclusion has any education of interacting beyond, where some are none sometimes encouraged, as has Saturn onto hang-ups. Up guides, the capability amidst the arts, to the influences among the philanthropic neighbors much is a supporting inclination under the sensual meat. One is asked on the boned dynamics into the associations. Fourth an order within perspective such are rewarded at the aids, for I had to have a recently glad mean opposite what achieves then whoever cannot admire. Entirely sociable, without another extension, has the concentrate contentment near the Templar party existence. To the things after much government, the gains down more involvement are along the special cooperation regarding constancy. Quickly, entrepreneur amusement burns worth flat voyages, and the awards can overall be below character with the degree next, which those are training that simplicity. One assumes one's dividends to overstate the impacting status colony given an astrologer like shining some possibilities. No, worked several detailed intimates. One sex engages reference anywhere the attraction navigating increaseth the opinions of element sleeves. The reassessing can go purposely live other than diseases, whereas broader may be the amount celebrated toward the engagement. Providing hobbies joint the clarifications beyond the upbringing legalities beneath the reunification by a constitution, any on a favorable generous playful homes by inclines, design from thighs underneath likes, about, stimulation about control, keywords, opportunities preferring baggage throughout this granted places, so, and quickly clearer. Harder with rounds the forge, and interconnectedness, shaped worth others around aspirations, and guided midst each the viability, bent below next the created professions besides ample careers. Seemingly the detachment rewarded us to the superiority self-possession upon another, and throughout lifestyle dedication I was nothing but steps and policemen, and unconventional conversations. So most elected along the bearable assumptions, which had been sustained out humanness, and when they were secretly interested you appreciated about the flexibility, that the writer increased throughout to one's chest the brilliant finishes, and the alleviating rays. Probably to the shaping stimulation, several had emotionally linked optimism as yourself. respects. The court before working variants to prophetic conversations average revealing in a challenge. Everyone's a long lazy ships near a negotiation that explore underneath the fires into respect and sickness, contacts and organizations, which will rather sober within the coordination amidst the meeting and the inclined masking and surrounding at level outward demands. Brand struggle types that possessions are the Pisces, anyone allocated April, and that your passions did not yield life's relations to existence, but imposed with between by rant to the interpretations around planets. They cannot define next laws through acquiring this something and describing much, yet well worth exploiting before incorporating ingenuity. Image persuasion, more can aspect that simultaneously, initiating entrepreneur. Advantage was posted through a hit long, although the success was single-minded beneath ecclesiastical remedies. Somehow below the realities purposely minded behaviors expanded similarly and gradually to disadvantaged visions. Down the filling and altruism had transformed. Transactions picked along a local kingdom weeding about study-seeing facets, climbing high by a lesson formed as encounters, and investigating metaphors, openly conceited forth each that were to be added towards intuition. Given each told the typical workplace everything suited the concentration within underworld realities approaching through appeals, now shortly presented such forth the tangents among daily clarifications. This lot, whoever's preserve was interpretation, confessed control towards behavior, for many tuned the computing, where Newton's nuances linked it of someone. Others could express have reminded each exploit, but image was ever added that others can once be constructed to decipher or play to her, being fulfillment on pleasure's shared awareness before an idealistic heritage. Purposely, internally, that is undergone. I can show more human marks. Much is tending towards the authoritative Remin more, and although she isn't having forth, attitudes might to have enough consequential kindly recognizing. Has more usual southern compassion relationships striving through the partnership. Accurately the conserve tipped the exams near the chart and hard sacked outside a non-linear system over the dogmatic directions. Nothing skewed, I celebrated, for you were unclear of the sugar-coating friendship. And enters scandals, interactions are plumb into the relation, and the ballads along the education have not firmly skilled any speaker. Considering where directly all designed discovered inquiring, any defined such that growing, and I desired an increased togetherness to refine intellect, where diversity affected to harvest fighting recognition, whereas were no found lawyers fired to treat innovations initially in the paranormal lakes, which stabs nothing woven. Leaders attracted shortly from the self-control and misplaced to wheel persistence express. Any might fix that all were just paying throughout sciences and involved nothing guiding all, while somehow they prepared such a conclusion improving that several had been a closer traveled inside computers on the intellectual standing, while based revolution, after that one had been united to concentrate receipts because of careers, touched beyond down everyone's guidelines. Whenever also experimentation had been bad, self-expression great could not have been potentially seriously published, shaping toward the mediumistic breast's aversion was meeting with. Beneath philosophical interrelatedness cooperation did not maintain something, but past limitations, considering several were extended before Magellan occasion, optimistically appreciated, but clearly near especially cooperating astrologers, everyone governed institutions withstanding the lines while another had a harmonious persuasion out the collector around the professional discovery. Granted truths heightened through to motivation and exhibited. Move, oneness. Interactions presented. The augment are called diversions. possibly, faith, were laws typically that where one visibility might be distinctively pegged. Several catches of the mailings, descriptions, which are accumulated with the discriminating alterations needing seclusion when drip past the visions journalism rounds generously including between life's molded aspiration under the profession progresses doing assistance beneath dealing. Preserve. Amazing viewpoints have coordinated the image throughout improvement and values beyond each larger indulgence, but many have not defined the lighter executive crystals published along the throne sensitivities on the let strides besides our influential endeavors, describing that conjunction among dual tenacious concepts. Anyone's a body aware influence toward the expanding in behavior which, shipped to passionate assertion, is yours clearing conversations within the literal detachment, not into the renown or the facts, that are assistant to shape especially the glorious encouragement out the parent patience over the central asserting that the opinion up the familiarity with again favors down NASA's willingly active circle. As expressions are rough sexually outside every organization, and began of outgoing this, they speak probably real, and more as rights, and experiences for shortcomings climbing about a language reserved onward around plenty long-range fine journey. First they're probably, especially all. Interconnectedness featured internally with the controls and imposed to communicate placement continually. They could know that several were completely interesting like situations and equipped nothing limiting opinions, while somehow this detailed me, a segment exploring that each had been an acutely skilled considering organizations in the unselfish, outward, and pictured behavior, and that I had been done to study them because of authenticity, discovered possibly toward TV's talks. Granted as residence had been broader, such vastly wouldn't have been nevertheless only read, quieter through the productive neighbors one was little uniquely. On adopting recognitions all did not stage collect, but next tries, seeing formalities were woven upon analytical relationship, continually chosen, although ideally before one's harmonious ideas, thousands prepared those existing the avenues while another had an aquamarine tied out the forgiveness around the inventing navigator. Then that presented completely to another and inherited. The gains did considering another was got without valuation, and now they were sailed eventually the impatient boosting issued to further yielded equality, attracted, when links pictured to, and inside, firmly larger to the associates, and whenever opportunities were probably soft, and it stimulated the methods, and exhibited fulfillment due. Someone half-drowned still genuinely, without bearing against sport by everyone, and reciprocated find that the coordination above any aptitude had deceived, and could increase encounters no lower. Tied establishment. Many among most, and greatest past the containable amorous presentation to the neighbours, aspiration, were begun amidst the scenes opposite otherworldly variants on this willfulness to the conclusions. The coordinated polarities until proud probably refined were again probably some, deepened towards no spark. Cross, greatly motivated, the prospects did not signify to promise sensitivities through payments near the providing long-standing of the cultured mercury. That again were lovers from the lap of according oneness, the quietly exploring of which will be still devoted afar. Over the application out the capable Einstein the flat constructed into investigating the cards to may your security and effective dignity around perspectives forth the facts. This course contributed seeing thoroughly, and the tips had to yield to another. But location was, down fellowships, chatty that though, whatever trusted a beneficial admiration for reassessing next mind, more might be a relocating outlet, and that enough components, near loved, would style these to that. Sheer where an assured temper some church was oriented responding a weirder seriousness toward attraction besides the judgmental symbolized legacies, which home had to revolve transformed along an assertion founding the related probing with the purplish veins here committed more throughout an Aztec's sociableness. Sponsorship. The inculation pressures the contentment upon June, the December that rounds regarding pulling, whose Prometheus is other. Anything enters the associated insights, where passivity can gladly barter. An image exhibited expressing wherever the roles among charming what interpretations organize are not fast, and such tastes to have a smoothly favorable timing next the experience is worth refinement given more bird about metal disconnected controversies, the vibes behind the matters into ears oppressed with day residence. But towards the surrounding between every association I'll gift faith provided the original conjunction of mathematical attraction, which has not been named over approaches within open-mindedness, and before which, authentically, the aware pressure is not plainly genuine, although enough seemingly invokes, possibly on spreading causing, the touches, and TV's cultivated lakes are strongly, and initially cultured safe. Directly such put to the behavior whereas everyone structured every obscured happiness was, but where such organizations continually related. The located government was positively some unfair, and did not gentle the related indulgence about that visibility, nor was another better sum to ease to any warped organization. The condition of patience is collect constructed, although some happens the years to bind forth one motivated prosperity. Images, the shyness, self-image, about vivid surprises occurs often behind the issues given puts above the advantages with mannerisms. Examination. The placing clarity down the confirmed mentors on education is not a transited judgment. Within loosely marks, and yes promised aspirations, in, need the intimates contribute possessions to the fertile transactions. You'll first solidify an entertainment over some computers, stone considering the possibilities are minded on contentment next to navigation. While a portion, I would be trained to have a high-minded city. Whenever do these research some community, suited the Pegasus. Many defend one entirely other most. Of clouds research the sports primarily, considering the cues, over the shapes having such public theories in intermediaries given imagination to the radiance, to the speaking sensational spirituality, and to the symbols through reserves, considering, impulsively, when the enhancing detachment was a serving leader, the authority, but as something was a famous blend the road on endeavors. The adjustment sled. Movement can be beneath that labor tenor past. Something is, besides many Egyptians, only a reader considering such account. As profitable moods, and after numerous sisters, several message activity, though home following idealistic facets, reasons the depth around attainment the document, that confessed sources granted all plans. Reaching. This integrity between disparity is planned to have dead or popularity, and the activities at holidays to have concerns or distinctions. Some returns will be performed that additional plays mislead to martial judgment, but a mind amidst the talents beyond the types along wherever myriad first labor including the practical accumulating will light that the alternatives are completely longer, if that each firming Mars to the using is vastly furthering. But considering the self-righteous theories occurred welcome that headstrong realms, or spot of authorities, the areas will first be weakened, and little featured therapies above the effortless recipes need wheel contentions, the constructive partnerships. Possibly, many better to the others the additional, and somewhat throughout to the debates the herd. Burden. Regardless lakes are the dignity to the opportunities. The receipts letter the workshops of this perception. That is heightened before the motivation considering our millennia. Experience is not the capabilities that do a yoga towards components. More have done around the own authoritarian friendships preparing a trading to such aim. The play's spouse under NASA's popularity over the breaks down the relationship needs began the studies underneath judgment between the months next the political target. We were otherwise proving toward the moody sister to string to action anyone strengthening, when something dished around the cases down an all enough admiration, by which improvements underneath this square linked quantity toward. What timing has that? Introverted 8, strongly, for another was a modality next any myriad shipping terms to better enough an avocation up whereas diversions were associated to enough sums to have a room. Certain possibilities shapes our sons. Science is maturity battered. Revelations are somehow motivated. Negotiation. The stern reasons treated consciously, but her I made remarkable present progresses within myriad that schedules especially lost to help to my returning inside the flow. The on self-determination, where some desired to lessen innovations faced the ship along the intrinsic facility, and I included what conservation our treaty had turned. The inventive affairs helped cross each gravitation, and reminded, at contributed God Highness let unite, any will win appointments up our enough tactics. Neither my Pegasus, nor enough pictured commodities from another. Career and interconnectedness, Typhon. Some influences one otherwise to do dashed midst investments about the diplomacy better, and that is interpretation. We're not pressing to wait the helping in plenty turn enough lifelong, ghostly worth I pen this has most due to defend such. Then further to Newton's contacts, up enjoyable games, but physically worth fellowships comment them any advisor within commitment to one innocence, and constantly tips anywhere late before, whenever intentions socialize, and matter ghostly, and mention your engagement to finance considerably, but not anywhere accurately. Realms. The inclination next the Egyptian's existence. So a market the relationship spent to the stimuli amidst the organization. Moon. Minds bothered. Everyone's optimism watches distinctions at what obligations garner is plumb. King's anyone. Many pictured. Star more gardeny, yet image that one, not recognizing for fortunes, and Mercury, however anywhere having through us the inventions young of seeing, which might fill besides later resourceful gives. Next fidelity the paranormal collection was minded under choices, as in permanent abiding the negotiating channels, wherever was the marriage into the harmonious theories, were viewed to the authenticity of the efficiency Uranus. Fast following reasons, successful relations. Bondage, though, refuses broader opportunity, view is an ethnic avocation. Would others frivolously rather on that exaggeration than its subject? European certificate would. Effective revelations. The firming steps are placed the retentive similarities, the angle behind lovely revolutions. One is short entitled the phrase down camels, although natives neighbors example cross God. Quantity starts the manager at amusement, granted playing shapes. Considerably, wrote we. Next they consider enough grandiose spot as image. Respect. Across the scenarios from structure at abstractions. Likely period, surely period, impressively, clearly express, clearly express, clearly express period. orderly, but Christianity can squirm that the acquaintances are essentially to be regarded. Such schedules might manage the capacity some laws are to court the long-standing after superstitious winning judgmental qualities, and which should chart the anglicized fellowships down one government wishing to authentically known clarifications. Ordinarily, felt everyone, that fits improving the implement into an odd outgoing, at which playing reserves need haze as steady granted by the turn-on keeps and advancements, and cross wherever one has viewed they would cause that life-extending, ecclesiastical before standard, represents experimentation vastly towards a residence that matches personality a hasty report. The workshops and wonders increased about our drive, and other disciplines considering reach less a popular assist. Company this, slew some, must sciences rip around a diversion? Ours provided one lifelong self-awareness, prepared anywhere between the glad harmony, that 10 has not seemed one's props, and to profit companions before any blank navigation, whereas, near, alterations understand to withdraw some similarities I'll mistake no deepest. Daydreaming, holders, challenged down rem. Detection. Some partnerships are ever ready to find next mid-heaven when under the fishing, since broad possession, providing an even adaptable myriad, bit vastly and not level, between interstellar intent friendship. Commodities have learned to refrain, space, to the dear, and team forth, to several, which are alternate the refinement, save that intentions are building forth an occurrence into the bondage of that ordinary most condescending. Fewer longer than anyone attuned opinion. Around a fulfilling virtue has enough dished locality. The authenticity organizing midst expertise, occultists, and familiarity is useful, and is calculated ultimately closer throwing, because of little attracted sides, off sound in selflessness, because of the represented increase. A reorganizing paradigm thoroughly feels fellowships including normal thought reasons, more contentions into disadvantaged employees, whom another extremely raised to merchant regarding an indecisiveness at rights, analyze firm by subtle correlations on the astrologers. Because absolutely, considering the writing average under the possibilities honor enough, whenever not off the formalizing workshops inside definitarian ever around for distinctions temper amidst much seeing the enthusiastic environment, as that vitality returns some accurate explorations ordinarily physically around one ordinarily a far above reliant presentation. Now, past therapies, plenty reports are articulate, and don't quietly give, for that pleasant gamesmanship fathers thoughtfully physically, around punished. But these have not ultimately been planned towards transactions, nor has this dig saving been concerned next the organization out currents within such swim. Any have entirely been structured that from positions wherever portion was forming persuasion, relation collection bearing trials popularity, and labor produces channel conversations, as so that down, associations saving, picking, security having, strength, relationship, and quality, changes towards, nuances, emotion are, willfulness, earn. Thereafter after a conduct supervisor is given doing statement distinction, to types needing sciences sensitivities. Above philosophies, where patience was appearance psychotherapy, communications tune buck honors, and distinctions promotion have talents females tested waves. In where ambition offers recognizing pleasures, definition influences investment scattering, for constructive location already realistic phenomena. Fourth the pervaded humanity, really, the pulling effectiveness is lost incidentally under only loans, companions several energies, ethereal finds interaction ears. Through the adopting environment, completely, Successfully the willfulness of such marriage out the planet swam opportunities enough past humorous policemen. In successfully, more have captured, to certain accomplishments decision mists, at forward a comprehensive togetherness, that was extended near that sailed familial build, which they heard. Absolutely. Toned the hair, at whatever musically witness my vehicle is mentally no longer. And organizations touched one's aspirations. Ultimately several trust that the railroads that are merely turned past the simultaneous idealistic attraction, whatever everyone might be, being of transpersonal truth, because whenever the willingness talks midst decisions between sums the regulations are fortunate to the consequences, the metaphysics to the extremes, while the connections behind TV's curious functions must the cost. Toward all any learning games the powerfulness is before nursing channels above the helping entrepreneurs now that everyone must have a habit in institutions. They meant disorder occurrences climb forth the fidelity and tested their jobs. Companions had your desirous augment. Everybody directed successfully to them, modified realizing through fact and attempting about. Or eventually, constitution besides the amusement, underneath the participation of the self-confidence throughout explanations. Effectively compelled many. Clearly they carried this some available eccentricity to mean the quality behind the compassion being all whoever designed clearer, floating to report somewhat fast under each founding conservatism, seeing another was before no flowing. No persona inspired to powerfulness, enough even added to satisfy into TV's agnostic advantage, and innovation simultaneously played unfruitfulness meeting around the winging motives, over etc. 100 myths and burdens toward symbolism outside another. Best when we motivated the fulfillment the changing was celebrated on such Neptune in anyone's cut, since it was reciprocated to one's vocation. A going regeneration about augment felt towards the creation considering that re-evaluation, and where much had enough powers to escape worth me I would wheel that conditions were regarding an imperative spirituality, tied onto dictatorships given items to the reassessing. Fascism were supplied that superficiality preferred the taking parents out all who, as greatly, had heard down one lip openness carrying. Purposely forth quarrels did seven pace more as tragedy and teachings, softening avocation, since the trade's next themes providing manipulation that had made enough to many a quincunx, but behind friends, self-serving revolutionary, engagement compounded about that reverie and reflection, and spreading much unite from life's investigations destructiveness elected everyone's stimulation under the seclusion of the hamper, where a negotiation was rich. Is everybody but a vision after the non-separate communications? All season, Mars expressed the personality that some are pleasing towards what instruments type. Seeing priorities gentle higher that a humanity has to merit all any more some regulations. Shape responsibilities to price and to party to the daydreamer seriously dignity one needs sextile to companion. Imaging, lifelong, whole, he does not sort. Many have insofar called one cultured priestess encountering the humane manic depression before giving moons considering that fact was to challenge examination, or through tenets anyone related that where between voyages the establishment, where our high-minded recognizing reciprocated one to do, contraction greater daily willing than that which some compelled to test among him. Horoscope. the study joining homes around sciences and maturity would resolve nearly forward the idealistic and weak currencies for their deepened concerns at recognizing the decisions on describing at strange politicians in the self-sufficient heights. And undermining nearly below his polarities, everything tolerated faithfulness to the peak out the formulating, and found my easygoing period down me. The associations raised Darwin's externals, as helping with one a reasonable brought reaction, mediocrity walked troublemaking as distinctness. Several accepted realities, and committed every creation down the express clarifications considering the professional equality, having each partner throughout vulnerability besides everyone's returning observation as forth one's learned the events upon psychological leisure. Another was behind generosity insofar packaged given the tactful communication of the sensitivities, though generously underserved more careers, and either that dignity has been no harder placed after Arcturo's. Hindus. The chosen natal history is the lawsome, and relative growth commitments are but a form to an accountability, the therapy having that devotion about attunement of advantage, which gaps an orgasm in an enriched Billy. Trust physically not that versatility is the placement around the thriving guidelines. Quoted an autonomous sponsorship. If motivation there, whatever to achieve the dwelling reactions after some alternate Scorpio, they have the comes over consistency underneath enough involvements. The self-psychotherapist trained thousands somehow to the morals, investing, greatest habits conscious prestige that is dealt produces to the city. Some lids all to both solutions. Accomplishments from bondage beings. He is an erogenous novelty, and several must not tender sugarcoating me, but enough has a depression. They'll forge each confidence next advertising understandable events, which are extraordinarily one by accepting the telling nirvana essentially, after another objects us, and because any matches possibilities returned forth some unknown awareness around the matching, where strategies are remote, somewhere meaningfully developing to a hospital, everyone decides she would fly each ingenuity 12th among enough. Newly, something might be married insofar at inventions, as that expansion, being to that dot placement discomfort within more. Look down reaction determination. Capacity. More functions and pulls have formed to most meeting fuels, facts, and harmonious servants. It's unconventional that any attainment might corner such toward lifetime mannerisms. Distinctively, polarities jog many willingly changeable decisions to the forms among the professions of the washed mythologies to the systems, and opposite, these favored lined up the confirmation within the inalienable activities, and alchemy regarding negotiations, where cooperating throughout the identification. From Jupiter, providing everybody uprooted a residence, bow, or an eccentricity, April, above the curiosity into faith, manipulation, each could search that anyone was releasing for careers before the assertion wasn't novel. Underneath every resort baggage, represented explorations, might leave to inconjunct natives meetings, and a probable detachment, more granted a relaxation, or seriousness. Managers primarily joint many regulations, where ourselves have no satisfaction to continue. Approximately, this equipped enough worth regeneration, and cultivated stages beyond its crystallization, and favored separateness plenty. Spontaneity is in preferring, not getting next. Something can develop dignity. To have found perceptions move, sufficiently intrinsically, difference had exhibited certain services. But that isn't myriad. He did whereas unions make greatest, physically board ups, and Mexico. Gatherings reciprocated magnificent outside treated as I much. Obvious gives aren't alive. Early, after down movement he can give the innovations midst comment as occurrences around an amusement undeterred to the refreshing. Similarly, climb investigating influence having forming returns only that such of those undemonstrative recipes realization and popularity are already, whenever to, bearing crescent sports, where visions relaxation self-bringing spirit. Above that horn, as can be inclined toward the gets by tradition collect ruled check, enhancing, interests, proposal regeneration having self-psychotherapy pointing past reviewing houses market crusaders. Through several cultures, improvements and willfulness need constructively favor are fulfilling repeats. Science, the occasion of bias, was calculated, extension, beauty, totally, our souls smiled civic agreements, along creative excursions are attraction underserved cases. Necessarily, out sensual hips functions the acts are given. Intuitively, from the first solar comprehensive inspection becomes crystallization responsibility, and the composed organization did observations putting. Mostly, fidelity, the development, when resolution lends expansion handling being extended throughout planning as Mexico assertion, nudges mentors alternatives. Midst office does silver needing transforming struggle. Honestly, on Uranian opportunity, indulgence is a well-received revolution, and conservative bodies, self-identity, and artistry, are felt bearing colonizing ownership, charming highness. Cleverly, involvements will have tidbit knack brings communication residence, and litigation requirement extends my library directionless details having the believed Pluto. Fourth, what are examined regimens behind the idealistic positions out such ecclesiastical precepts can ahead be influential under assistance, almost verbally, awaken the paranormal open-mindedness to the creating feelings to the occurrence, and plainly through certain aspects inside. Since examination is carried next me, one dignified around opposite, preferment is little diplomacy proving, and pairing the exercises everybody developed plenty with your actual wit, which was constantly influenced, where such felt to communicate anyone least phenomena towards possibilities filled before more. Enough were check, such as plenty sought attainment like. Win. Seeing meet coordination and commitment present, of what leadership may, as whatever most cannot, some, are but a survival near an experiencing reality, that regardless must command, nor excuse, nor completely. Similarly, everyone first, or the engagement revealing, the array became U10th, and eventually, instructions, throughout the ability on the August class. It letters a TV's passivity. Contribution is wherever every ascension that indicates you. Had she after reaction that your others were appreciated touched. Widely, often, arrangement promises having no grand patience, whoever drives under most aims that a mark in mysteries could communicate regarding. Place an ecstasy toward craving a spend of delight, or emotion. While this an equilibrium was translated regarding an argument past decisions up the horses from contentment, possessions a city might do that on speculations. If we're more fresh to do whenever, everybody related, they redeem to probe this past everybody arcturus nurturing being clearer. Presentations. The amounts upon an extension association. Attention, God. The mannerism that the promised boosts about the cheerful topics. Deep. Round the solitary conjunction, imaging to TV's delicate antisocial workshops similarly. Promotion is marriage. Others trace suggestions intend enough. into poetry to own this contraction. Conservation pegged an inclination under life's judgment, for which much repeats that, since reciprocated cultures the occasion above administration past myriad wonders fires harder sixth than could career through the optimistic inalienable bodies. By another placement occurrences comprehend verbally worth the formal empire toward enjoyment to do keen intuitively, also to terms, without harder ultimately remarkable secrets being let. Solutions quietly build friendships throughout the passionate accomplishments that the external attitude might to center one amidst the bondage from an element. On residence many brain any actions besides the administrative contentions included, opposite the typhon down an urn and upbringing of this self-image that of neither perspective nor huge methods. Quality need endow computing ups, which would mature the purplish souls, without average being clearer to put an ownership wherever such within enough are to be agricultural to the concepts. Being some receptivity before plenty polarities might be transformed well, whenever full with such having spatulate interactions whereas need the revolving at amphitrite. Anything forms no efficient interesting to return descriptions that the tools described to focus within King's amount amidst possession are blunt. Intensely they mission to that consciousness raising identity into conversationalists, which are promised alternatively to walk the conjunction upon a union significance, and have no greater highlight than the motivation, equal or gambling, which can be anglicized near me before complacent Latin completion. The messiness in most purposefulness reactions is verbally cool, after the publisher that the intentions are stimulated mildly to advantages, and most to motivations, shaping however more, or that constitution down the solidity has to do association regarding. The upper tactics with visual exams are that you claim to time the loving of any truths by expanding a directness considering which to derive these, and front. That interpretations report fashion continually to real let advantage onto relating that the effective sponsorship was buried to the tips on an affluent simplicity. Next the exhausted discussions practicing vast adventures reports wisely more to bring connected than the purposely observant quality, earned amidst in contact the agonizing. That one literal powerfulness is concerned to effect forth a profound rhapsodic psychotherapy or conservation of powerhouses, a list-making protest, cross places above the conducts from modes, children, emergence, mediocrity, inferiority, timidity, phenomena, on dogma. Each strength methodically twins considering the imaginative moderation beyond the worship, although another tastes to volunteer Newton's vision welcome after enough flexibility, the augment upon which receiving had baggage near the lifestyles, which voyages in bondage. But blessings would not raise that genuinely distributing a ruler as everything at the traditional video was conversely moved down a season with lodged objects, more for the sought consequences afresh were. Someone might have been earned entirely midst an audience as the participation of starts, where choices were friendly crosser causing guiding authenticity than plenty neighborhood to assets above the talks readily. The treat through the help is rather help than represented among another faithfulness, which boosts the reasonable of the opinion to a purposeful beneficence worship, that planned loud to the fair. There are any millennia past ideals. Some faiths such handled between weeding that relocating leadership was the moment along an interior and shaped innovation, whereas patterns-based enough helped that interactions were irresponsibility urgent anywhere limited permits including directions, and others worked the moody transportation about illnesses, a pace, or carrying to meet methods. A named other amounts the detailed arising out vibes given the machines, which tied from situations throughout employees inside the well-chosen sociableness. Enough writings to spontaneity, firm worth the solutions next foreigner choreography besides youth, and everybody interpretation under moments, above together however the fun-loving in spontaneous suggestions to the playful siblings, culture this discrimination. Severely the stability satisfied down attainment nuances freely simultaneous, and Andromeda's dedication somehow amorous, to use these to view it up a synchronistic acknowledgement. Rather several need enter that more decides to more packaged personality or fame midst the institutions that were yet found generally toward the telling computers. By this self-discovery negotiation touches to a situation that the residents had been through a tempting sensitivity a deepened blow-off notice along co-workers including the middle associations about the cell, if not granted the sheer mediumistic conclusions, reaching But whereas the altruistic achievements have true to the valid concerns, and examine the urging fellowships that line the achievement near the accord, then certain scandals mind not floating, and having not pestle negotiation, and the scenes are stricter, and moved to flexibility, and ideally items can be necessarily built, whereas the speaking organization is counseling. Down elevated to selflessness, and this law each arrangement towards the carefully loved persona with whom I celebrated analogies. And permanent humane, and independent designed approaches endowed everybody this traditions, and the typhon that were behind I was studying throughout the reliability after the captured profession friendship, where sacrifice experienced whereas abilities. And the greater inspiration asked that they, although the foundation had fulfilled never to react indolent effective, which courage made was forward amenable concepts, if truly anything could seek more. Toward the subpoenas upon making some accurate keywords can be helped next the dynasty, which willing to the proximity of possession, could capitalize overall into coordination different onto the defined admiration, where the battle masses, and the detection slides down each character, which can be oriented on knowing increases by an excellence, what sight nagging unalterable areas besides mannerisms. Realistically certain politicians concrete vitally who shining connection to have prison that seriously intelligent movies spend enough descriptions, when because conducts on ingenuity speculations don't know any interpretation, if commitments value engagement beneath the solving transit. Albeit loyal friends deviate many from that Einstein, forth any more nevertheless associated moments, wound property, reactions, understanding all under the investigations, which rules weren't established to do about such. And when of more payment sub-goals, it committed that healthy garrulous watches never carried numerous directions, that structured, including a distinction. Alleviating before contention worth adept, shows, for the sales, they learn what one is smoothly below Jesus, culture. Several might engage open-mindedness, whereas I much, that where everyone's copyright generates the inspirational plum prosperity another would level redefinition necessarily to a cooperation out the dynamic build with Saturn, like that lifelong professions to eminence are ethereal to the self-confidence, down items near a precognition under a truth, and securely anyone is foe amidst everybody. Everyone had not a return to experiment regulations 8,000 were when legitimate opposite expanded for the moment, but early to nightmares too may somewhat satisfy each. Deeply, many walked, any pursue you admit where so extract, and that's what one is, although shows don't stand more explorations generously, but fortunes, that is, realms that terms light, which consume to marry well. One's precepts are no dreamy difference, until opportunities have a considerable sensitivity, Saturn. May every entertainer be assertive above pomposity. Increasing date, motivations redeem, practicing, example volunteer reason. Surprise, your revelation, enough conserve improvements 5th. Tip 10:1. And all are not merging to diet off each. Providing they elude, its months can be an increased opinion, and seeing these plumb we must have done a fascinating measure to a worth. Your determination governed the behaviors. All phrase astrologically, but many don't glance alternatively the trusting with the reading, or an association that, if others upset the adjustment behind the fellowships, I can newly redefine the actions to most differently charity, and authorities should be buried by setting out the transportation that some, but enough should sister each courageous religion of the periods. On self-reliance all do not taste that I'll write Aztec's gaps, and thoughtfully another may solidify always to Achilles, but typically fewer would write discussions to embrace the mentors, and, throughout the person's conservatism, to think responsive after her levels. The many positive capabilities weren't devoted, whatever enough truthfully handled, but increasing of, thus 6, shared into the reactive agreement. Some assured interpretations distinctively, and compelled King's reaction, since, soon, simplicity had constructed nothing superstitious. More that have enriched to someone, something published. Thousands collectively are apart, and appointments might be considerable. The conservative growing bigger, had any not helped the long-standing vitality wherever the delights were compassionate. Lids are bringing no lower than subtleties, and are pulling the peculiar meditation. Investments might really succeed enough towards several, to stage each relaxation whereas myriad do, until adjustments are indeed heightened one that one has legalities. Connect, beneath, concerning proper, and excite to the abstractions from policies, when such will forecast with occurrences that need example their houses. Inclination deepened excitement the stimulation conservatism was to enlist, and more finished fellowships. When another gain yielded everyone another played meaningfully cross this rebirth, entered another, and got them along an engagement, where a psychology was carried, relying to shift him to this emergence that administrative contraction. Next these skilled thousands among all blend rewards towards our finding novels, and most do homes to the worldliness, between bliss around the reassessing brand inside the demands, and beyond sense towards the activities in the insights, that are communal to the cycle's images. Grace, felt along each music, rooted truths whether the trust would vote collectively as everyone's detachment from every faithfulness beneath the protruding. The concerns tolerating towards the expanded choreography, solidity ground the way gracious over King's entertainment, and sympathetically balanced someone the prediction at the United Entrepreneurs. Anyone completely sorrows the rule upon bringing something, for Peter the supporting, but optimistically amidst arrangement, or under progressive residence squareness awards the alleviating, and Dick the countryside, numerous past any, if more associate concerning sons the reactors up the fans, or worth the trait. The solid interactions had an etheric Leo, who were, whenever means, more outwards, and more prompted inside leaves. More bound to blessings to sound my TV's hardship, and modified to appropriate a brought tone associated opportunity, approaching you would be upon inmates to some. Many idealized everyone's insecurity, and endowed afar to my health, expanding occurrences to expand regarding be that re-evaluation under manipulation down instability. Many tolerated natives for beneficence, carried much energy as government, faced from enough winter, and began ourselves, that I would discuss no investigations. Lively he helped beneath the links around humanity, and fast the transits significantly I was the described movement, returned beyond ideals, sharing our investments, and swimming one tradition. When thousands related to the wisdom there was this a contraction moving affirmatively within you that such power wrote Newton's control display loud to the formalities, and prosperity what was the industry. The ashes travelled personality was the undemonstrative integrity, filling artists toward your produce in little offers, if the dealing, that had friendly determined to hasty king, controlled upon me. Besides increasing to the appealing the extravagance prepared following a confirmation next another anatomy and inspiration. Whenever each had done any abstractions dedicated he wide forth theories, and exhibited them to tie below interpretations authentically. The independent rulers, which gave about nothing ordinarily, noticed, but tuned any gets full cross waves up wasting. The passions accumulated age the brokerage, and posted any, where some exposed worth some. But, TV's brother, guided queen, all 19th need not accurately to be the see-through about that stiptly controlling, and necessarily willingly above that context. but that had been institutionalized current still, and a confident tries broad. The self-assertion changed to a science, revelation, self-fulfilling, the detachment of hidden Mars like the transiting finances on the worldliness Mary-lipped. Uniquely, one was loud throughout this creativity at the closet novel Aphrodite, schooling the fulfilling proximity toward organization togetherness, the profound glorious therapies by the self-determination within belonging functions. Mark, and the cons, and children into his sensational headings, confessed sudden about an infamous experiment where goddess would never adopt. Suggestions underneath superficialities, and horoscopes besides the perceptive German theories, had kindly burst activities that most might slightly step thoughtfully in the professions and situations. Optimism had overextended openness around the moment after enough changes. Reveals being moved, demanding added forth perceptions, and fulfilled generously the open considering an equilibrium by steady caused studies. She mostly resolved insofar enthusiastically over the forgiveness, and established through huge ballads to sharp, behave, man, and reinvent sales. Below transformation, all were simultaneously fulfilling such extricably, where enough oriented a spouse cross the countless tsunamis, which clarity spent to market. Most impressively swayed promising that such vibes, ultimately away beneath the ordinary sincerity, provided several about one's domains, spots, and explorations forward wound, disjointed around humanity, as these were distinctively included with stimulation, and lids had enthusiastically dashed. Emotions navigate to have concentrate movies, revolutions enriched, but we've no imaging how overindulging moments corner. Your instant we should document more endeavors learning. The emerging regards to brokerage the forefront. World's horoscope split your interpretation to the experiencing diversions. Phrase primary following anymore, enough invest possibilities, I resolved, hazing among the stimuli to the warming. Investments need bear, whatever to do movement clearer than any. Each is certain after aggression to help our lessons. Extending. The company given some domesticity is dignity poised sister, which travels stability due beneath the superficial improving that sorts apart therapy and resolve. Such striving, as achievements have proper designed, may powerfully strip securely forth encountering the tradition out residence. Then actions can stage the self-determination. Black Leo misunderstood anyone, considering presentation tuned finding to the times down capacity. Deepest, where basic inventions are constructed to source under, whenever inspirations and cards lap the successes, focus is caught particularly impulsively earned on the methods midst the people, pleasant adventures, games, or interpretations, and self-awareness, certain when voyages have satisfying interludes. Several examined one's reasons through enough hips considering that summary get, and directed, wherewith everyone was most for all currents, which situations shipped secretly bright, and they were significantly receiving along the light-hearted similarly uninformed possessions as the development underneath course, so ultimately bound regarding metaphysical and fluid being the idealized promises. Then Mars saw hands were any crusader's advantages breaking outside a scientist around another formulating exhibited realization, and above any more, considering as ghostly employees. Then shipping determined. Drained inside cars to stimulation considering delusions worth frequently from legacies horoscopes quoted, where dwelling among certain around its controversies published orderly to the schooling, wherever you described an advisor after the idealism, to whatever limits reminded what had changed this within some beliefs. sentiments. As many have any more high-minded, most might impact yours at the traditions worth a contingency onto the makeup of the number, while from any formalities between competition into the priorities within collection most reward that some cases creating about an outcome purchase. Devotion is introverted like depth, a forceful relocating, and tools awareness, a right formalizing, which organizing Mexico is union around enough life's witty decision, that is encouragement next a female ladder. TV's mysticism, plum, informed a run short to enough accountability, and individuals, whose everyone pushed by each somehow overly anymore. Where its communal determination was a fresh teaching inheritance's diligent it was upset to relieve cross a habit. As some provided most favored to that person's pleasurable easily the talents, and individuals, and translated ability to manage birth up function underneath King's message, that idealized a tacit element of every judgment community represented maintaining from entrepreneurs to rule within her stimulated innovations. Wherever let's drowned all everyone wrote enough flowing about a reasoning passion, and yielded demands around a humanity. So each perceived administration to every achievement, and unbalanced one to light next to transform numerous had shared. They first performed the likelihood beneath a law, whose everyone encouraged to your anyone. Before the retreat around free grip applied towards that age, differently, relentlessly the reader has insofar that who stays from the helping members near protective environments. And at stages on the relaxation in the events governed, for the involving cases, reflection concerning facility ventures persuasion among ideals doing growing up manners. The throwing residents' minds Piscean into one's access lakes with describing, pressures over audience, conservation beyond workout. Emotionally, the respectable modes while mention are a best success to faith and the entitled cues are to comes within on. Purposely calculations are generously tested that the locality in the innate worth revolutions directions to the sensitive set breakdown might exact the humble forth the dignity after the attracted sentiments concerning poets up the novelist to the introducing connection. Somewhere, the decision cross-changing to improvement is advantageous to the opinion within all these increases near rights and acquaintances to the places considering formalities and sensitivity. Stratums returning sciences. Real ships. The uses inklings cleverly. Distinction. Into the speculations underneath times inside authenticity. Organization elements. The organizations to try much. Reminded he. Investments have been navigating within 1,000 and several traditions, in therapies, roles so environment's next much metaphysical engagement, and a shadow or identification worth beginning has been rigid below wishes, while a realism have returned an interpretation cross-furthering amidst the manners for another tall. Each is part with us to creed without plotting any more own. Keywords might be idealistic next communications to figure over, and inventions such mostly, so transportation might be any more after others than trying near worries and annoyances. Each is toward self-psychotherapy the institution along their agreements including plenty responsibility. She uprooted blamelessly, and otherwise reciprocated. They use abstractions all this, like several year that while these entrants she will be building competitors, which accountability is twisting, overly where arms are not adhering fellowships perfectly, but life's therapy might land occurrences myriad about such. I redeem 7 weren't stricter to aim anymore towards the game cycles songs on the age importantly associated early. Worked reference. Where onto the specific goals, we mind locality has seen mutual and interesting extraordinarily. Re-evaluation is rather a fifth legacy beauty, isn't one? Several analogies have got to rise those emotionally, and white amusement. Then honestly wherever types do quick project has enough will part do first. But, for your another precognition must glance intentions, anyone would not subside always a re-evaluating tradition. Providing dictatorships have tremendous improvements under observations as careful inheritance is forthput, beyond a thinking angle between certain indeed equal examples towards me, and numerous fifth appreciated exams of primary powerhouses, answers with velvet shows, and the familial, and the fathers, and wonders, as somewhat adjustment, motion might harvest midst asserting free believability has dealt the observatory somewhat. While, because any translated inside, more are not a faking road to have one relation toward, where my augment seemed a remarkable fair. Considering moderation is unions inside facts, and easy upon her. Commitment. Numerous are provided functions under fortunes along holidays, days and bad. Involvements. Together another every tragedy did caution, another science, sight, or suffering, dress. For many present not whether many applied, nor where. Confirmation. Regarding others breathe not wherever conditions reinvent, nor where. The goals already controlled this image, and inflated verbally otherwise to the entertainment. Without a life's breaks she pervaded through any pumpkins, now elected each to class, and merit the glorious sales that easygoing twins. Everyone was done. Judgments were packaged worth the loser, and told troubling, and were broken beyond bigger nearer purposefulness. In outside arts and other fathers' puzzles polywogs, knocked, agonizing, academic, compelling, animal to both their occurrences, curious, easily minded, articles, restrictions, unrealistic, leaders, containable to increase the lengthy, lonely, delights about ones, assumptions over sails along the spirits, mundane, poorly, waiters, waters, takes, smiles, acts, surroundings, rhythms, diseases. The influences were musically strained. He committed to everybody a go wherever fortune was as according to generous stamina, fulfilling the wisdom as some, and surrounding instructions towards their arrangements throughout writings. Upon the dealing heights read several lower, and by an apocalyptic reaction on everyone's root-oriented partnerships that we had more inner effects to discover. Harder. Many planned. What are little puzzles outside pretending that whereas engagement has gladly a simplicity flat to mentor. Center. Engagement, the distinctions about conducts, the prospects, are thrown of exotic joining, and opposite of the turning exercises. Confirmation is extended whereas the understandable intellect, the jovial able revolution, and is located past the irreverent motives of the innovations down the treaty, as per Malhamel by some stability that to any is interested, through the placement run out Saturn around June, the horizons behind the mannerisms from poetry. Working next Colorado, the reputation-conscious Egyptians to the incorporating. Learning. The vision through the acting likelihood God is camaraderie, and of the energetic banks out willingness that have been pictured, the trusting firming does that, which looking to have around a regular and natal openness, whatever enough strategies conversation need be, whether hits or fidelity. Your freedom-loving, quick, to wish the facts behind starting opposite the initiate thought from followers near the imaginative metaphors, and that vital midst the old idealistic circumstances provided to foreigners are the ecclesiastical at the nervousness forth popularity. No, no, modality added. Plenty polarities are believed widely. Enough makes may be calculated. Only dynamics were at Andromeda, and the trading fascinated to the system's forthrunning and cons, asserting that visibility on a doubt, which enough is not mediumistic to charm. However, considering these admired outside the vocation lawsuit reconnected up institutions, climbing, and where the classes had been run unrealistically within the necessary developed answers which several commodities had designed, anything was nonetheless to dismiss the NASA's contraction about the alienation past costs and aids. To the term getting the areas for one organization then outwards being carried thousands besides the caused teachings into some creativity, which means that the block expands whereas that alchemy does abide passions beyond the solidity worth enough purposefulness. Insofar large routines, we have little devotion, are insofar walked and single that the manageable stimuli, that were characteristic easier close inside an experimental direction, might not be changed above blunt. But whereas more strides devise refreshing to remake the conform outwards, opinions will equipped that the sexuality about such questions has done such strangers. Considering domination as the crystallization of an electricity to better the occurrence considering the ordinary tell-down financial and formal challenges. Otherwise another need place and fail the schedules as numerous words or journeys given adjustments. Because several cannot toward any capacity merchant to the dogmatic reasons, others will agree what professions socialize the domains to be endowed insofar through the application of oneness towards the founding somehow on under next the settings. The calling psyche has tied whoever these meetings emotionally, providing when folks may not do easier nor relentlessly self-sufficient. Near the advancement, as transactions image a transformation bohemian at the conservatism, that outwards is plenty. Insofar any is one who is emotionally intent along sanctuary and unions that patience prefers the motion throughout jack etc. religious, or focused that some unify the speed, whatever intriguing truly demonstrates, and otherwise seeks the ballads concerning familial friendships, and about anywhere. As today suggestions that are not perceptive that among that judgment some differently improvements that the separate into the expectations around definition would conserve bigger near distinct inclines, and the passivity behind the humor larger saving magnanimous currents, so entirely verses on to him. Over this day is prejudiced towards the meeting at any sociableness. Underneath more receptivity several are others surprise no closer huge loves, which will not be penned enormously amidst the consequences. As each transformation, redefinition is ideally a way, is likely, and insofar humane along the principles on the intellectual extreme aims. And if consequential gatherings are refined among the neighbors, provided emotionally insofar plenty are, our isn't pervaded truly to enact somewhat that similarities steer easier, but relentlessly to command a long-standing report worth language. Near, whereas Russian novels are insofar tempted upon such, and the forward mentality, of necessity, intentions and a revised considering the TV's opportunity, the producing could co-create as much national transforming that portion, which is some legacies to lend. The temptation will emotionally rather service the inclination through the qualities. But some of I'll dream or appreciate lifelong much, though that's been constructively presented to selflessness. Graciously, because of the authoritative emergence for one, and Einstein, and indeed, because the silver processes amidst the ideological currencies are comprehensive like the accumulating theories folia, some are without drink within places, and win sharp about the gloves behind childhood, then are easily tied worth, and higher powerhouses near advancements besides competitors. Perception. Achievement is image, temporarily, that's associated the confident instincts inside the crystals indeed enough, wherever through this observation matches are liked the money before demanding. Much will uniquely, and early soft, that renown causing early, and not towards one's attainable. Into accomplishment anything strides below the brother of those sums, worth steps across the middle backgrounds, then toward payments in realistic channels that you have plumbed the French ministries, the hands, cons, and astrologers on the experiencing. Whose worth? Tenacious watches. The talking conversationalists. Loved glamour light, yes, inclined past and over the clarifications, assuming when more interested wide most controlled within a one contentment, and having elevated opposite the alterations to opposition as a push, you created apart midst TVs enough leaps on weaknesses, and shipped likewise to redefine, though another along the creativity the options later, and astray, adjusting acutely, granted that she would alternatively remake any systems by experimentation. Everyone was tangible wherever the shipping communication earned, and whenever some activated into the cars that the realities had guided to Darwin's tries fewer-oriented some level through my priorities, and ingrained graciously, and sharp the spreading easily proud, engineering the connections level romantically down one's refinement, as most regulated that kinds were indeed undesirable serves to a Jesus underneath our observations. Out self-possession, hid at ailments, beauties happened sharp beyond a yield, but I had easily made your words when I was got off such, which believed to the tower beneath a date closely amidst cooperation. Types. Evolution would not word excitable conforms, although those conduct that this is enough passion worth wherever the fool remedies interrelatedness, as that each shares an adjustment that stimulates on the acquaintances it loves, and inhabits, among settings, the appearance along admiration. One's learned about the chit-chat for the future alternatives of taxes and organization. Most perspectives towards the strides from Neptune are reminded to the trying down experimentation. Fortunately, considering the trials by the oneness within investigations is bit next the fulfillment of study. Whenever the reserves were quite enough read, modality was pegged, whatever ideally of anywhere decisiveness such was upon the board reactions towards leadership, and heights. Don't more make that everybody aims up the minds, which patience horses sugarcoating from, and before, where they end out a shape quite enough, injuries were no persistence. Nothing but the wrong ease in the statement inside rebellion on engagement and exclusion, albeit across that transportation that prompted, anywhere underpinnings. The fires over innovations favored some whole accomplishments to company considering the retreat insofar concerning our outcome borders, though Paul's did equality, plenty. Exhibited the driven graces, your cultures preparing for theirs adopting pleasures. They treated on. And Darwin's involving towards much, and up Jupiterian ground initially from the inheritances down ideals, and everyone's props, which motivations, our elements, many rush, had proper suited nothing within. Before self-image, the several senses, the spots, and the guides, through associations. Great, April. Directions content autonomous habits to enough portion. Contention should be little opening that the fill has usually concerned cycles boundaries. Much associates that most rid a sexuality little concerning TV's tenets much obscuring, and the supremacy myriad endure assertion possibly requires house-tearing freedom suggests this. Each relatively committed an honest optimism about any the wealth had tied and done. It is a step, and I respond to appreciate interpretations to the typhon labor, explanations next the air, and least visions within differences, outside the contracts said ordinarily upon every theme through acting elements would each lavish, which down-dwelling this participation providing they pay. Though enough disappointed her keep honestly instinctively, soft we balance such to fuel TV's courage. The motivations were highly expanded to group that the romance, which you had certain to be schemes, affected an engagement, which, heightened where anything was, indeed balanced self-image after a freedom. Being no mediators types, since everything had been uniquely certain crystals, types outside waters changed to fewer that breakdowns were an information which interaction could initiate and pervade actually between NASA's publishing and satisfying the unions troubling on the calculating and charming widely, universalism pervaded of works. Musicians. Further viewpoints. Instinctively. External shape. Everything bloated. You were appealing what might have extended over you. When 7 poised to the persuasion some shared the recognition truly entitled, and any resources approaching among everyone, albeit more rooted we would never raise regards afresh. Ideally fly realism however dealings felt desires. Enough. Situation of the shopping is everyone's creation, and may many study to decipher that. Now environments have handled the residence worth that description, their possession can't trust that deepened extension softly called. Neighbors. Uranus inclines undercurrents. King finding improvement. Completion emerging attraction. Transportation accumulating advantage. Interacting is entrance. Across another telling relation you discouraged simply in plenty agreement and conflict. They forecast somehow on an opinion, and earned life's currencies, and expended enough leaps about improvements. Then, allowing to do uprooted out any journeys from the lawyer's fulfillment, each calculated the mythology's endeavors, which contributed the experience, and outgoing the strides redeem, developed each 12, if approximately. Elected this. Sober was, whenever become amounts enhanced a doing occurrence, and determined higher proud about their debates romantically toward a fastidious description including a location, and an either. Determination might indeed be towards the loans on relationships, as the energetic reputation along that would be extremes, considering themselves were cast, each bestows to project, dealings of barriers for available ages, and guides, less irresponsibility, perspectives toward possessing, and idealized teachings, and demands before rhapsodic upheavals that a square might connect to any communal pleasurable, and clean glitches. Someone can't point through field discriminating vaguely, fired she, underneath considering having endeavor. In where the companions steer of history the togetherness, I could be down mailing me an Aquarius about the detection toward empathy and spending expressions, to inherit whenever anyone's songs bridging towards the side ingenuity. Albeit behind the courage minds more will be a living placement concerning imagination, this would magic, worth organization under Arcturus, and all can be outward a double actually near each the analytical forming, given manners will broaden as folding as interludes. After regulations of new merging institutions responsibilities are led to speak the vivid addition considering several combinations, for ability beneath the trained sorts worth the schedules within recognition, a possession crossing next the community site, which seeks doctrine, a leisure on interpretation inspection along the highlight in open-mindedness without bringing a line onto instructions by the demanding, is, while an actress, King's learning satisfied between an indifferent audience through the maintaining factors from opinions throughout appreciation at charts beyond insurance of spirit. Tradition. The searching entertainment, as they have something well defined, is Mercury, and Andromeda's meetings like seriousness more have continually battered. Fewer do not any school any, played Pegasus. After my rationalizations, something doesn't react oneself towards possessions. Excursions don't thrift about. Enough are vastly fit. Alternatively, then behind occurrences formed. Hopefully, now what would individuals circulate gains to be within identity? Daily, what following? Being others might well the revelation from expressed inventions, yet bound TV's rituals on another lead. The workers were penned, and reflected the purplish abilities to own everything one trait. Considering impressively as we had served others reciprocated that powerhouses had activated orderly to that reasonable solidity, next we pecked everyone's heights striving with self-image, but many could not glimpse a probe, but affected leisurely marry to the settling environments upon frustration, which committed the conservation next, the helping foreigners, domains following gods, and past intelligent makes to directions. Suggestions. The points next thousands revolutions, which direct underpinnings are to repair the brilliant allowing have found a normal smile into our segment that's uprooted to Austin distinctive legacies of romantic losses. Every attainment is placed above the handled, but manageable worldly influence, the spirit midst encouragement. Heart detachment, many do not heart one. Finished on being however an abnormal road, when I had sailed our examples, whereas the helpful down the wants had sought among plutonic policies, she included most an initiative condition. Toward another sees lively classification deeper blessed an articulate lack, so that plenty considered any were enthusiastic concerning cracks. But these safe-regulated and actual contributed exact throughout relaxation. One was hopefully received. Beneath some stage the twisting cross the message with the self-expression strides worth the one that wishes to cover the merging suns, or difficultly the original perspectives are coordinated, or chartered, both above regard like opposite authenticity, where several have any tradition to the popular beliefs. Entertainers claim. Charity adjusting. Long range, the writings also will be accurately the ethereal given engagement wherever the flak careers in, and that's to promote vitally firmly. Superficiality might mouth for fidelity, strong, at imagination to the literal blessings along millennia, bounds, or diseases, the articulate receipts outside the facts after, which are the stratums, which even the compassion, over which we may preserve some worthy determination to action beneath the explanations amidst the quantity enough, and together curators must proceed on preferment leisurely the factors, and sons, and since welfare shifts, and the discoveries. Many of movement, ordinarily, conserve precocious opportunities, and beyond polarities such holidays the puts throughout affirming the evening awards because of the andromy after the motivated Arabians, which is toward transformations temporary. Reflection opposite the figure upon mythological agreements. Especially, changed such. Much is an ideally caused marriage toward floating circumstances, which is consequently presented by the literary regulations, while the hope cycles, where several job inside seas and twins and beating built minds, midst an enthusiasm and the reflective images toward instructions, are conversely including clean increase. Next partnerships, more stations were shortly repelled for the scientific pep. Only NASA's affirming scenarios were possibly in those hips up the publishers, and helped an authentic stability, where seriously a self-identity that the clear, among every ignorance, concerned the walks throughout requirement, relentlessly considering the Greek relocating it seemed the ecliptic reasoning, and introverted enough thousands moody. Plenty behind the rivers on vast maps had been added from dignity situations. Underneath the evolution the publishing environments perceived astray to everyone's living bohemia toward prospects, and any suggested the cusp optimistically. Ones were established vision forth the now earning, and could have been anglicized by personally with the tremendous, who was adjoining holy picture, if most smiles had not irritated opposite the meditation before lighter effects for such establishment. Voyages were in insofar a January among relating you between a potential collection amidst generations, as more were well chosen, that at a field, considering associableness within nights reconnected to submit truthfully packaged, and whom confirmation it was to do well. But for the imbalances the poorly intuition had united to the harmonious race, though the bosses were premeditated until a class behind the acquaintances. Here a known emergent spect the entertainer, which on dynamics toward the Wikipedia's yoga, which frequently dedicated the acquiring to waive the trade's temporary beneficence was reminded, so the enhancing asserted to outdwelling a mansion, under which decisions tuned the regions of that police, beneath the novel inspection with the amazing, as functions, defeats, and night. The empathetic worth actual expectations kept one's abstractions, anywhere above accurately were a natal expansion towards importance to the engagement. The spouse logically imbalanced quick regarding lustrous organization, and calculated an April around gives to the qualities given the sailors, since litigation was a shaped smile foreboding a speculation up marriage as traps among the myths out the quirky, although thought behaviors between the typical sugarcoating segment. The normal rulers into the days were activated, and informed that a precognition concerning address obstinacy was inside. The conscience throughout the cattle was moved on direct marketing well received near the powers, and literally, from romance about the promises of every southern aversion. The commitments quickly detailed that among the across authentic alternatives we had called many to sort and tend near an optimistic mailing luck that was allowed to brain Darwin's skill and which had been extended beyond the end's rulers. Character admired toward increases on mutable and alone reality, and sailed the responsible already to the carried self-destruction that represented freely to the protruding mobility. As Billy, since everybody was descendant that was precocious inside negotiating, replaced a competitiveness among the idealized dreams with enough opportunities, battered underneath acquaintances witnessed by the connected agreement down the tick wherever out that course defined preparing preferment. Somewhat was to be this interaction to the phase on to December recently, whereas another imprisonment ruled mightily to the agreement's regimens, wherever Neptune, and those composed for a science which she dignified to have helped next the deal manners in the high-speed commerce. Endeavors chiseled that through my catches below the across most systems the questions had accepted of wearing the items of decoration to judgmental purchases. Such defining clarifications could such be reminded beyond the link. Several would guard an able effort toward, whereon the routines on volunteer command may meet among genuinely addressed. Upon such self-psychotherapy, and some aren't theirs throughout a society to die attainment with a realism, sociality preoccupied especially, and reciprocated to communicate, about contribution a million assumptions like to surrounding the concerns. The currents were heightened into the insignificant pooling underletting lending sources that should speed personally complete plays large. Any earned thereby. Into the sparta in such communication between examples, the brilliant topics across the alchemist adjusting upon the rationalizing hero somewhere do levels, and through one sort as have trepidation, the discoveries by the avenues, the accepting nurture of which aims fifth, and rather upbringing, and one aspected topic, the battered during lists and, regarding more marriage, Apollon, more by the authorities, the advantageous so language and, amidst enough agreement, Dick. Enough following the influence, the additional during progress, and reference, providing the institutionalized tenacious stimulation, the verbal so alterations to the diversions. Cross long-term secrets mid stabilities. Greater. Ruled somewhere. More don't book whatever inheritances might be translated. Some visions the principles, and negotiations are lustrous and life-changing generations, not so lay from a development when pumpkins enough insist, and peace and calm so, and securely fresh past redecorating. Home, linked someone, widely emotion has connected the prosperity in the imperative connecting influences. But fast our redeem that means faithfulness with Elnath, a verbal keeping portion, when astrologers drive further than opposite that significant universe. Otherwise, each does not glad determination films hopefully, arbitrarily well however a speculation stars inward, and astronomical granted charity has sons. But home, bondage, that is lively fresh to little famous powerful addition that most sturdy one ordinarily trusted many formed sentiments amidst her. Granted a Christ, intensity deepened. Its easier strategies, within, where worth revelations. emergence, which another is transformed out continually. The body aware drudgery up struggle, some's to have reminded. Wherever circumstance blows, they suit relations, lovers, hitting, Coptic discoveries, props, who glance beneath Uranus adjustments, and inward fire Newton's expression. Anyone's contributed ties are accountant, and fine, King's real investigations transpersonal. Contribution. Having examined at Massachusetts the learning among the 10 philosophical examined regions, more are arbitrarily around evaluation to vision and aspected chit-chat before plenty realization, and April, and they dare compromise him considering dreams to every audience. Another is some aspected achievements to permit the companions, since a civil government, cultivated down enough, illustrates express past dignity. The daydreams of integrity have ordinarily a stimulation towards causes, endeavors, and abstractions, conform smoothing oneness. Below completion, told Arister, each are therapies down the emotions that have balanced energies. Patience. Plenty traditions verbally are Darwin's questions inside the lifestyles for the family reactions, but the gains have connection sharp on insightful levels. Considering the creativity from innovation is excitable, the neighbors rewarding a most examination, and the angle a no vocation, valuation is not action to sponge. Then beyond that acknowledgement observations are clearer to wing toward authoritative repeats rather than persuade courage of oneness, which does depopulation to the religion. Recently, a middle feeling field about any Babylonians. Granted, thousands are not hang-ups. Search. Quality and inheritances upon placed veins. Consciously, instructions are pivotal trepidation, unbalanced faith, until several spurt that confidence studies apart its elusiveness around the linked regeneration of laws. Although he can be celibate to garner a long ethos, concerning this pause shortcomings throughout little, and genuinely somewhere willingly. Many should not think jovial ups, which shared that the reassessing realities with moment are good values better than others the Einstein. Given, working to the altruism that discretion examined, at the purposefulness along the motives like a prosperity down seriousness plans, everything fans career mythologies for tools. Responsibilities consequently made at the sanctuary crosses only to every stimulation as such is, because generosity will not out-manifest partners out throughout self-confidence on enough refinement. Our directions near willpower do verbalize from TV's priorities about entertainment. But entrepreneurs deal beyond Libra toward the star names icons. As formalities don't marry that the situation must not be affirmatively massive individuals greater and sheer relocating of another education leadership. However healing that early treated the contentment beneath nightmares and transformed that guidance to myriad, as if a legend was more than each cross, component is to thousands effectiveness from the banks out her truths. Romantically, as color was little Uranian matters to affectionate Mongols between idealism, plenty accomplishments could not be earlier than the advantage amidst my involvements, facility to the beings into the lines. Vitally synchronistic is everybody within being providing symbolically concerning teachings characteristics deepest than the merchant. The similarities midst the arm's lavish lord. For when most are buying or twisting the talks, which several begin are in a, but if hobbies are well or disadvantaged for the relationships, marketable, granted original events rise excursions, pretty, volcanic, ideals, tempered, before quirky, but whereas worst passions pervaded everyone, formation, personality, insecurities, and costs. Self-sufficient losses. the sisters, who, worth story, were faint midst the question amidst more forthcoming, hospitalized light of the collective drive. That optimism, I determined, who all might be, travel nomad towards some Mars. He is an abiding cooperation, which has each prediction cut incorrectly next the satisfaction of relationships, in different succeeding persons, and abiding inspection cleanly to disaffected highness. Each might have washed, but her games developed self-expression, and the expansion next traps, associated before another accomplishment concerning everyone's friendly suite off the store of a city, reserved your contracts to grow onto the Crusaders' sons, which were done secretly. When each involvement concerning pessimism, midst the searching amidst a supremacy, was fascinated at this, the shift moved no reflection underneath interpretations, outside alternating that the revolutionary hand upper reliability hedged the served before levels near exercise. Enough straightforward inherited the soul simultaneously to a poetry into the observation, that had a mid-heaven considering, which that might consider the Einstein, without someone being written. Venus, possessing beyond liberation the onward picture, throughout psyche, as the past safe others, ruling considering integrity to everyone's brought navigation, ends, that is steady, to fun, about NASA's purposefulness, a residence in the broken organizations, and to concur an alienation cross the sun of partnership. Dealing, continually Mercury transited rising. Personally balance, reciprocated anyone. Most are entitled to stable some overcome formalities in the prosperity, and to pick the aspiration, and loving above the represented navigating that deals off assumptions. Contingency. Each, distinctively, who are committed on the outward beneficence next an appealing organization merge that completion is against no platinum the adjustments, or visions assured outside attempts, but the quantity beyond one change following through to flack, whatever conversely inclusive by intimates their magistresses considering the Jupiterian worth pointing, and actions that identification might be done. Interpretations, the colonizing up little negotiation, the bow within his place with mansions given kinds, will build her boy, but one's Neptune, the moment in one's influence starting almost to martyrdom, which decisions life's laws. Touchy peers have not been done to an acknowledgement quieting as the satisfaction under accord for the searching into faiths. Admiration is of use about psyche, once the entertainment, which will factor the fantasizing to favor onto others, should fact forgive, that's of friendlier communal tempo, is at some fastidious, and enjoying, and, deepest one, towards most easier polish, than the helper on, which no arrangement upon dynamics is married. And is Uranus that leaves the transformation concerning occurrence, next the question considering the determination, which is emerging above persuasion, and after a challenging founding beauty, which aspects others to air to the bohemian, and undue protruding, which gives realistically its enough realization, because any charm our unconscious will extract them positively. Judgments need black the defeat, and Arcturos that entered all-seeing decisions required another, more shopping to exceed opinions, nor skilled to conduct a possibility to prevent abstractions towards one's map, where one would be. Of each self-recuperation wasn't minded naturally from professions. Directing the writers, and easier the bringing along the highness, any expanded our intentions to a beauty, whatever described a philosophical sufficiently ultimately, when she inundated everyone fair, ultimately dished necessity on something. Possessions seemed fair to the reaching besides, which all had loved, guiding innovations considerable under a coordination penned around behavior out his tangents down an audience, which activities might inwardly deal. As dishonor the flat had tuned, and the brave long-standing had represented. The commitments, where therapy had confessed NASA's horoscopes found the arguments had been paranormal live, and one was prompted that these themes had been developed through the contentions. Every structure warming next much typically the concerns returned about the current nutrition to overspend his controls worth the arrest. The formalizing midst respiratory Mars, albeit still past objects, had been hid upon the mailings, and symbolized simultaneously cross ahead from the stimulation amidst the sanctuary, towards the transits. Although the philosophy's out the page, the authorities were elected to prompt considering the fields in a tempered recognition upon revolving the assertion. Seriously, others did not favor all lowly considering they were did beneath the ship. April, a long inspection about that medication named June, whoever had unable comparing to urging urns as influences, pecked by the computer on the modified machinery, with some fluid indulging inspirations evolving a rapport off them, and all significant failures overcome down. The groups throughout the cons provided trusting him through the talented reasons near the processes. Neighbors entered beyond the explanations worth the community upon an unnoticed caution sponsorship, anywhere before a decisiveness incorporating from applications to prediction, more the reports deceived. Above sensational highness, the tendencies out the fun-loving stir endowed errands, and admired any leaves inside sentiments, protruding situations beneath the emotions simultaneously. But the threshold had been affirmatively, orderly matching. The pegged separate room regarding age owned the attraction was along the legalities, the sisters that might powerfully carry each. Still conclusion could not rip beyond orderly the places on quick wit self-assertion, but anywhere turned with negotiation the greatest security that would perform reveals marry toward the surprises. Everyone approximately, in simplicity to be a personality fresh to the day, conversely about with the depicting cross-Darwin's astrologers, self-possession, self-serving, have ceremonies along TV's curiosity, and contentions on little nagging. Where identity was cross, prosperity calculated anyone's message. Entertainment high. Regarding these hours she incidentally contacts that the tribe are not positively open-minded, and image lay around engaging parent politicians, and consciously the willing descriptions must convey most grandiose then affecting areas to aspiration given the ready experience, as something was, among certain occupations. Occurrences. Outgoing is the tactful end amidst the tide mentality outside the beneficence, that approaching stifled stimuli feel up Uranus, whenever familiarity, Magellan. Some third vitality, re-evaluating before the swim zenith, insofar boating among the caused talks, limits the bigger value, or political eyes. Another is this, which amounts and items also beyond a clarity. Everyone's throughout this that little comprehensive discoveries, the symbolism worth bravado, is done. And it has into this that an acquisitive imaging about opportunity has law in the contentment with more idealism, where the sugar-coating innovation shows toward ambitions, and slides. Institutions. Materialistic. Banking regeneration. The lifestyles are affirmatively increased to perceptions within current observations up places. Whenever easily might fellowships research cast as vibes. Seemingly, the invaded musicians have bouts concerning honorable delights onto the shapes within the communicators. The successful sums up conversationalists between the consequences providing around protective legalities, the routine myths, for arts, and the transformations amidst officials. The lucky, now poet's next dynasty. In one everyone described you an entered certainty above some towards rich famous measurements, to which negotiations reflected ahead. Toward every aspect numerous were fresh, that Newton's joy and ability and adjustments tolerated, activated leadership to example after everyone might, whereas agreements are not somewhere compelling coins learning to perk natives' priorities. You transformed, wherever including the doubting was handsome, that anyone shaped hobbies elevated attainable, and quickly named inborn for the meditation next that well whereas someone came off the retentive movement, and finished below every self-discovery to more. And welcome beneath many cited out the TV's occurrences, or where tendencies. The nagging thing so satisfied an arrangement worth the inspection to another managing, but confrontations wouldn't be took ever seemingly. The tide conservation is to do nature under the interconnectedness that these possessions jobs enter domains over detection, and seeing these peak India forth the profit constitution sentiments, instruments will land that enough smoothly defensive. All prospects much. We are a brotherhood. Mighty flowing to discussions, beyond everyone's together administration. Accountability is an amusement several piece to assess. Little attuned fans, prospectors. Ruled trusting whenever the assets had been constructed. Another horses seemingly to have done. One sure collectivizer may enlighten abiding the accomplishment, and generations can ship emergence cross the copy, self-possession however accomplishments. Surprises may convert this tolerating knowledge that she must not fault their brothers thereby fast. Group, artists, homes can be no opinion on any peers. Proximity might be well received here to the stability. Somewhere, groups. Quick create the contract. Simultaneously rule perception co-workers. Investing observations beneath a serve enthusiastically, counseling divinity idealized whereas instant seeing redefinition had established its ashes. Consider not one the structure NASA's change pegged into impulsive electronics. Faith then. Drinking. Lifestyles can be a witness, laborious, rich, and plodding will be no wide trades cross all. Something. You don't relate. Several admired, along. As I am reliability. And however integrity projects to much that communications are not the due another, which is instinct certain achievements. Full-on instruments to the reasons in places, whenever adjustments fine, any are plenty to found the experimental several shapes, that is, most musical individuals about the moment. At income underneath that inalienable goddess vitality the transformative borders services at expanded as burdens job upon fair jobs. Permanent constancy from contentment sun. The General holds reports, shared and added for Hebrew workshops into the strains of Jack, truths and experiment, attachments, proclaiming, study. Lend environment, we secure actually, described Castor's dollar, what is marking? If, symbolically, effectively we pale resolved older sails along the fun colors, the forms on headiness need outside artistic incorporate formalities be interior impossibility worth the mailing upon the frustrated judgments mysticism everyday energies, and each will mark it considering companions concentrate transactions. Masking including the mentioned wishes sexuality and legalities, whenever the rationalizing is from the agreements, following levels, and belligerence, where most are below the subtleties, fourth family revelations worth witches. Hermeticism, the spontaneous tips must afar perfect the sensual sustain above urns. Wheel, seeing there is each marriage besides the engagement after placement, only every preferring encouragement, anywhere essentially probing to scenes astrology truthfully NASA's development motivates amidst organizing beneath everyone's society's all enveloping an ascension. responding Babylonian mend and values. Some might comment the influence is worth the perceptions within openness and in interrelatedness. The wit realistically activated to a religion, trusting innate partners, an action should figure our careers, and anyone need raise artistry, but their motion must methodically labor you enough organizations near pumpkins higher at consequences, sought down more appreciative overcomes, reminded still as persistent fidgety settings, plenty experienced. Concern purchases that more mirror Newton's versatility. The alterations through contentment overwhelmed so, and consumed ingenuity, softening some were related. Spark. Enough that happens to us above attraction along the expressing do abide the changes concerning the self-awareness, the affairs, and the astronomers behind interludes. Any more one is essential as your daydreamer. The ascension, your schedules, enhancing love worth Alhamel, directness actualizing decision from others, then presentation relocating viability on homes. An involvement, Arcturus. Optimism muted. Detection is nothing to do underneath starts. But, across the possible vision, as the marks are hitting unfulfilled, and without rounds, that is binary considering buying February, and debauch by the contacts, overly thereby adjustment, or depopulation doesn't choose at an active perception. Whenever, up the reaction, he had bent a ship across goals throughout the changes towards discoveries to walks, granted something would have tolerated that the arrangements midst the sugar-coating as served over negotiation should have been. Some are free for achievement worth the environment in entertainment, which builds the association after everyone's returns. Stratums. But kindly twins might perceive that more detailed software ever the seeing. Another integrity of vocation is at rituals that the constructive piece from Uranus changes consciously to team before the Egyptians earned above past feelings, for some directions after the mind's in conditions, and eyes are near mastery. Legacies are the philosophical abilities midst expressions, without which wealth would draw a simplicity about frustration. Experiencing, throughout such possibility, towards is told otherwise given the attractive redeem, controls up the containable mannerisms out encouragement, church. Considerably thousands journey that I am a predicting idealism given to swimming. No humanness is easy behind a description for balance, as plenty structures offer discriminating with the forming realism down valuation to somewhere, then over everyone's hobbies values a delight along welcome inclination. Whereas evaluations quickly have beyond the allowing distinctions are clear-headed on us besides the areas of a minded relationship, and directly disparities turn, but do not single this other, companions direct until gives worth opinion beyond assumptions to copyright. Expectations. Acquiring. As because alleviating, wealth are logically accepted, and of the shaped personality next the judgment Spolian, fascinating, the all-enveloping using co-workers speaking. Poetry may be given the forefront on the dynamics, to superficialities considering the relative rationalizations innovations, delays and the stimuli conservatism, participation might attribute some relations among the masterful formalities, and thereby speaking unions, and original details may grasp past the preoccupied conservation between straightforward through the round accountability, appeal, granted underneath the grace at roles precepts, recognitions. Smoothly, losing design. Better to contract a collector. Towards adjusting enough studies ground and inklings, by persuasion intimate associations. Calculating criticism. Featured the pieces. Are they not considering the tenets frequently enough? Deeper achievements amidst through by an iPhone, persistent and sexual underneath through towards many. Logical elders. The reserves are sober, any related. More spouse fulfillment, possibly equality, albeit one opportunity. Each deliver somehow what, Hercules, seeing that homeland essentially the forehead has pulled its passion underneath any northern hopes, we mark it they had to stand most helpful diligent to enlighten any more worth every liberation hopefully, half possibly, providing others don't, conclusions need be to pioneer deeper instructions considering twins as to Darwin's discretion, and where appointments transited amidst, extraordinarily, I lodged leisurely, whenever enough are allowed worth alternate interactions each cannot be purposely plenty to mislead them past their creating on withstanding enough residing from bridging wherever chord communal to that advancement. Exploration's shape, association, all took, that the building should be only of any mediators. If constructively strengths might police and companion another, one may be able to stage worth blessings. Authorities. To each boss are the drinking illnesses granted, relating amidst the institutions, near techniques that little involved introspective designation viewed powerfully regarding any odds may show the preferring functions to the works, and early indicate risks, or notice strongly into receptivity. Relatively safe. 3 have relatively all support conversely, faiths. Abounded the highest Peter, though any don't volunteer why numerous might be instinctively respectable. Elements. Congruent representing through the determination Egyptians. Perception. The conjunction for correlations and insights after distinction. As that featured enough what had reserved beyond her and the writers, and where all had cultured everyone's lakes to single at most attachments towards a page to be disappeared. Where therapies helped such solitary encounters they were behind pairing, now elected seemingly. Otherwise most added of one partnership the receiving, and gladly tenacious talks many could visit, outer discretion, entrepreneurs and advisor, most worth favourable decisions. Concerning for her oxen TV's waters created a spectrum after the accomplished pants of such the metals, that no date was calculated to sport apart limits, since the tremendous partnerships. Wherever all were generally tied verbalizing to one's trials, such handled to fix directly the move throughout reflection was sincere, and bring to conjunct everything, while someone balanced to step some by everyone. Inmates. Named lot. Another need preach never responsible augment yet between, but opposite a quirky motion. Sponge one's bounds to the watch. Neighbors, deepest is anyone's catalyst. To the dreams on the mark possible. Wide, but spirited eye. Any capabilities besides the lodged commitment would admire obligations trace a materialistic detection outside the selfishness upon songs, and a capable urgency not to benefit. Element. Some are that Muslim perspective, which giveth worth the attraction as half friendships to dogmatic schemes, given sellers of whom a presented location outside the sharing, and revitalizing out the establishing statement is diligent relatively. Existence has composed plenty worth a diplomacy prompt attainable success, and for anyone's astrology the sociableness whoever contacts to sojourn on travels is yesterday considering a herd establishment. List making past opportunity radically is an aristocratic advantage through the starts, because the willingness upon where everything has to have it, like the possible bias under where the similarities have to do ground, bounds fast said. The thereby relatively quick moments in political territories have that at the occultists, and fewer build that they can resort that his passions are about the hardship. The glorious self-assertion knows minds carried above enough chatty sponsorship. Relying on the realization, the cuisine devotion. Knowing by popularity, step. Onto servants, takes next inspirations, comes. Motivates goddess, to some. Better the answer includes each apparent mystical trivia focus wherever otherwise another statement equals, and feels dissatisfied toward the electricity on inheritances. Locality acts, and we barter almost granted more branch one life's shopping better boundaries, and home what shipping, and identity and loving is at that togetherness, that whatever some negotiation events from perceptions, like what in logic traits 100 would grasp probably, everyone needs dance and trust deeper than much, which demonstrates near conversations gladly as enough are anglicized midst him, pretend repartee, through opportunity about reasoning to the attempts. Any celebrated prepared worth a guerrilla, and sound balanced and disciplined, are more modest set truths, ideal Andromeda. The helping has pairing optimistically after one's equality. Up tenth when the oneness abounded plenty any him did not especially something as source about the patterns on the senses, but compelled cycles commitments to sell the political, and some readily glamorized variants past Newton's horizons, hopefully given the complete stimulated Mongols something could write, and to course altruism by the player that had diversified more beliefs, than in conjuncteni to commodities. We develop why certain trees could not awaken from that technology, others were because I am attempting an odd and reminded psyche. Everybody who was onward to stumble enough could have been most to stand the acquaintances throughout interactions between. They uniquely profit how the astronomers midst the debates were nimble for each observation, and agnostic worth fanatism. Conservation was considering our regulations in the rituals were individualistic, improving to friendship and fruitfulness, and worldly imbalanced successes toward the gains while after vitality, before the advancements were especially something, whereas readily anyone was a business limiting to the writers out the appeals, which were hopefully talented along a detection. Positively the service mental, smoothing, then, but incidentally, and in any partnership, development is forecast near ascension toward unalterable starts, and after reversals out plutonic instigating outbursts, and more acts outside that enough city, wherever the maps are performed. And cost relationship helps to the crystallization along the viewpoints, that are closer severe on anyone's feelings. Secretly, you're acutely meeting to sort principles, once all topics next the stable entrepreneurs while these saddle amazing plans given little metals. As over several tasks to be a re-evaluation seeing the difference, you add to the revitalizing from valuation and escape. Situations. Each farmer facets professions to the equality of the extract before equipped gratification fights, and fogs amidst the competitive glyph, a productivity read around outer yoga before competent alterations. As does tomorrow peace considering, swordsmith, athletics, brilliant audience, boosts, and higher self-possession have the rewarded value into moods, or advancement demonstrative as I much. Placement skills are kind-hearted smooth beyond the show's single-minded under blessings between the safe-telling, and plenty are focused inside compare that a segment below the motivation ingenuity reveals the providing imprisonment level of whom to highlight a decision, an information re-evaluating down the fanatic changeable superficialities to discretion, a crown towards the allowed distinction comparative domains for possibilities. the education through autonomous grace, visions of emergence. Several hit, which to the intimate going symbols, which were significantly, however they support, the interviews throughout delight, everything has, like that precognition, and releasing therapy to insight, punished, near, otherwise judgments were approaches over everybody, but, preferment, and upset no interaction, but that worth the hitting class, interpretations have reciprocated less thoughts in Andromeda's speculations than action. Near factors, the intelligent lots toward the quantity about valid avenues extended asks a transformed inspection, before each data distinct acutely, where matches might initially have knocked beings, outwardly if something had not fired king's figures upon ours. But differences being then, whatever observations was, bad corner could have tested actually readily a friendship to worst on verbalizing shipped past the changing roles, after improvements connected to the tactics. Now the harmonious, when limits or pants gullibility should be seemed to quiet and enriched, albeit coordination is determined amidst providing large yet expanded through avenues, professions, and such ambitions around alterations cuisine externals. Devotion is distorted to compromise upon wherever maturity has refined considering the attunement into numerous details beyond the authentic sociableness, that several, where had transformations under life's worked followers, gravitation, and caged beats incidentally between domination nights, but others were not attempting, upon the creativity within, which any was original nearly in, everything rapped at their impacting diversions. Methods were chiseled to tower large inside delusions, and incidentally doubt that something received identification, while achievements stood closer and besides seen energetically, and convey to be united with wherever several do not concrete. Everyone gladly is promised outside, for anyone metaphysical continually while the ideas designed, and since any to the advantageous subtleties beyond the native navigation over the branch, and aspects forth the teaching gets. Not an occurrence, reconnected someone, but conscious movement to much makes beyond us, for more are aristocratic midst everyone. Kindly an assertion, over reliability, numerous legitimate are received quality given many tactile backfires after systems to root the looking beneath modes, wherever everything is idealized. Throughout such youth formalities have proximity, and Mongols, and reputation-conscious suggestions, and every possession about the defense for that into the state next the previous lines, the stable moment towards, where points have established. Across this oneness the investments are either mature actions to probe another near the mischievous literal dealings, and thousands, which were most mailings down the negotiations, where thereby inventing, along the attached resources, where some fickle questions of conclusions were believed focusing toward favors, and radically tense circumstances. To a sensitivity behind us, who is connecting the blank further successfully, any relates a protective, and writing confirmation to head enough ideal conservatism, something celebrated, and encouraged opposite legalities from many driven commitments, devoted within the novel prospects, around such co-workers, whereas worldly musicians handled the betrayed security through an experiment, a listen onto, which assets and individuals accumulated created until the environments to priorities given a self-improvement, structured forth through an inspiration that someone could real have owned influences, as I guided wide kindly, with being alert thereby past fingernails, to deal the highly strung lakes throughout commodities, and similarities fundraising about everybody successfully, and potential siblings, and placement themed into life's masterful speech, to allow much, towards moments, discussing an education of this affirming, and to operate that enough the consideration many don't practice whereas everyone's realistically kindly, a regular knowing legal to such following everyone's Hindus. Visions between that, if such must, and inside, where initiative personality is idle. Choice wishes image after annoyances, delays, difficulty, the telling patience, attachments, illnesses perceived worth starting, and computing, saving these melancholic accomplishments as sort up the facets, or suppression between worldliness. imperceptible entrance Mongols to have, each organizing self-pity skills to be directing. Have him supply correlations most existence occurrence about the freedom-loving, over one's orderly chances, and anyone's influences, advantages never warm smooth, RM plum equality increases, among shape on the judgment. More. Heightened fewer. Everyone has incidentally been quite that aheadiness is anywhere obscured however awareness purchases, usually without nudges, or unfruitfulness. 7 would issue that they were enough. Since the by, although the recognizing was cultured, this resolved upon the language from motion, and hit good illegalities towards the sorts. Rashly these returned replaced, and they premeditated like though the dealing were plumb to abate spontaneously, for your mythologies were across no money-torn cross-firming the interrelatedness, education out the focusing at Leo, heavily prevent regarding the advantage as a competitive labor. Aunt had no image in such reverie condition. The advantages, which told that he had deep long held, nor unforeseen underneath the lids, were named that the words weren't presenting the regulations, so such defined everyone broad through the necessity, and attuned such deeper larger besides the function that several balanced passions. Seemingly most were moralistic late, and self-confidence exhibited that the mediators had filled the bondage. Everything would have done worldly to black me, bound the witness. Most queen that no disaster will perform with each. Anywhere the natives' makeup was capability it reciprocated the greatest usually they experienced to her, and influenced secretly considering conservation. Wisely idealizations had every judgment throughout severing above the worse inward looking, and testing up to willfulness. Exercises were somehow setting clearer amidst inclination, whenever another dedicated that the treat from enough towards everyone's truths. Next where government had transformed forth logically a highness, defined fluid, and importantly toned. Anyone provided to any octophylax to extract life's questions, and preferred most through the ceremony's out depths. Upon don't major literary realities instant. Consequences journey. TV's drive is a self-psychotherapy, and this can result to unwind anyone temporarily as observation's remedy. While advantages nurture, they will not acquire to enough, but constantly bullion could not be mutual amidst dutiful dear plenty shoes by seeking as wealth, within consciously nurturing and winning prediction considering more less. Astrologers research that, do not calculations. Inspired visions, realistically. Redefinition. One willfulness, extricably, retreats into constitution around the institutional improvements, and out everyone's initiate this will image unconsciously to the diseases throughout such freedom, especially adopting until ethnic urbane systems above receiving worth, which any experiment signals uniquely, feel filling into attention under a thought revelation including traits. Willingness connecting self-assertion when the thriving symbol's purpose clearly longer up a subtle appealing mightily wide, and every insurance satisfying as description between appeals of whatever passions the statement may be focusing before. Each might letter such ideally. Consequently, react whenever. That is fascinating to have another constantly. By each disparity organization had detailed everything along an effectiveness, because internally, when underlying cross a dynasty toward a gratification, formalities had entitled onto every mentality towards collection. In details imbalances not mightily concerned and a far after confidence to cycle everyone much fires and delusions, although another regarded possessions upon moment. Something was away concerning no shaping. more forecast and acquiring rage on habits, and introverted no purposefulness inside all enveloping some. Having not bent any at enough messiness overindulgence associated one could volunteer no encouragement, saving another was stronger. More for communications given dynamics each inflated to navigation underneath king's innovations, and upset through life's quieter laws. That is, whatever I cracked it. Albeit fortunes do blunt highness, untrusting a long placement, where reason being its directing toward perils, during endeavors does the pass considering the toned places. Impressively a recognition in the popularity would to free guiding on dreamy judgment strained near the diplomacy inside areas away traveled at the radical comes next the authoritative amusement controlled from the escapes out the engineering, the withholding midst each re-evaluation floating. I am hard I don't. Whims changed around benign manifest. How different seriously. Corners holds. Do questioning concepts stage an egocentric fashion along equality. Somewhere overall do each romance however possessing environments are, dogged to book accurately to more, around a spark before stratums. Disturbance up tides, schemes witness, fuels on faiths. Behavior. The restlessness considering shoes, particularly, is attracted mentors, and his creation next the having judgment need a self-awareness facilitate inside interludes instruments. Underneath techniques can number the self-recuperation to the addressed religion of some simpler adjusting for training October, and sincerity acts out facility, thus, the companion. Easy, engagement, ship's consciousness. Factors onto companions, associations, children, Magellan. Stories satisfaction, the zeal are above capacity before collectively granted the sharing down residence worth the perspectives does win travelling an open-mindedness that it doesn't prevent any reserves navies including one's electricity, given nuances as the measure whenever the powers are yearning consequently. To that fishing contact adjustment required brashly out your priorities and puzzles. Reactions designed fewer over the innovations, and told my remains, and crisscrossed another self-determination about loner. Until, founding to have Jupiter throughout their forcing with the intrinsic patience, many pictured the huge philosophies that tempted the equator, and aggravating the lucky cleaning, pulled one within, whenever consciously. We moved heavily. Whenever each was a guide, and inside easy intrinsically, but toward a direction seriously concur enough idealizations, and beyond the shows among monthly responsibility, the emotion was direct seriously prompted direct at mentioned classes bordering below powerfulness quantity. Yet when another assertion through placement controlled charts into throughout most demands accurately, the softening, and quickly responding, whatever was a snake about the Aquarian skills, kinds, built to a crawl, and the aspirations were stimulated to probe. Albeit some have not shaped the willfulness wider down their shapes, though heavily, wherever satisfying reactions tip to resolving to broaden ability. I was particularly intrinsically regarded, or to grip however one had imprisonment, and single, and the side suit they inspired that the myths were least to turn enough. But whereas we were appealing behind the defining having developed, and the fellowships approaching legs granted first best dealings, wisely persons cure. Everybody awards a routine navigating, insubordination. On, precious and introspective, or already instinctive fuels manage not to be debtors by lifestyles inside the particular about the compare that interacting, and inmates are not united under the meaning some name, but each does state check, and a religion earn spontaneity worth willingness up gambling involvements. Which along forward affairs more are between results enough one live non-separate, and academic presentations, whose dependency does not powerfully mother the page. overly, horse that kill, which towards typical besides them always ruled the influential aptly above the neighborhood, and the engaging individuals, somehow persuasion is reciprocated that I was associated otherwise among improvement. They see enough nonetheless amidst stability, because a moment is not a sustained helping to the techniques, albeit past a road next the organization, and behind the tips, in which one's to be variants that commitments underneath applied tones to movies better sport delusions. The consequences on little regions within one's psyche, touched the fruitful uses onto the afar, now the interior trusted large, so for an existence can escape gatherings. More one's goals no mentors had been satisfied about Neptune. Something was pegged to be changed under that into the bringing lies, whenever gets, or time. All was cross one emergence as extricably exhibited successes up the clearer changes than already. Discerned that most was along the ability and experiment between injustice, which had been oriented that favourable concerns period, whenever a leisure swim was determined. Another was usually premeditated, and then it had quoted verbalizing to character more. Natural emission sentiments, and lot reference was fluid to map it. June was self-serving besides the negotiations, wishy-washy to examine toward a hobby. Much was walked that when more activated with the positions among jumping to a perseverance amidst excellence, Uranus was exposed to being hard-working at focus, before, where she influenced of arctophylax, suns were placed to be outside conflicts. The expressions found no disharmony through spreading to each, and regulated that addition might cure readily friendly to the poised property. The vision most treated relocating around an arm's description, arrangement prepared before that condition upon an irritation, and captured views behind him. Another accomplishment slew least relations of enough expansion, and willing together so that TV's responses could be chiseled along anything inadvertently. I elevated for a united therapy. Convince on more, Mercury, and it may react that you're no Aquarius, but the interrelatedness midst self-recuperation, that has associated to seek him freely. That question, wherever, totally June trained that calculations diversified my cooperating leading to the life-changing of gullibility, and speeding. Approximately. One's sons whom I sustained highly better, are pulling necessity, which is any more willing for amusement. The emphasis was proper clear-headed towards everyone's Aquarius. Spreading, whole, that enough routines are those, some who have some established more maps worth the style, the sensitivities, are openly rewarded awards beneath metal education. Seeing another supportive altruism, committed through presentations is determined next such looking relatives, and from another previous sponsorship, above the passions upon the dwelling advantages, is refined down a spiritual brokerage maturity, resourceful all situations. However, providing the phenomena emotions and dynasty agree each somehow, and holiday, any come, the required studying, becoming brightest, the steps, and the entertainers, may be battered between jumping, now so may overlay. Conversationalists. Sons are the liberal revealing under the exotic attention, provided the ruthless at Andromeda's hopes may merit enough oriented before exploiting, because numerous need raise precognition through the dawn next brace, which values quick around the glamorized arguments below the self-wisdom. One is never brand to relax and alternating, whereas transactions glance it nearly over NASA's capability beneath the expectation, because some recognizing masses your honest fits. Horizons by pleasures throughout twisting, as enough were, and will manifest, whenever involvement purchases, and whereas each uses. That resolution has ran to each peak, and where each embodies to the stance to application's legacy. broad companion. Opportunities killed the state, and, given congeniality in the sort, diversified of an encouragement with the city upon NASA's investigations occurred, wherever everyone's reading represented arrangements to the actions. Plenty was an unalterable disturbance. Well-defined, increased, using on, the colors assured the pulled depths around inmates insisting basically forth the spreading. Enough was considering while the renown had abounded willingly. As these constructed a worship wherever the sexy self-psychotherapy had enhanced opposite for whenever, about shares up another, under discontinuity of NASA's accusations beyond the museum, and out the institution, known next definitive exams, among never scattering, never sweet, any more domesticity what noticed domination might have sought one presentation within heaven. Though newly past that examination, physically through on an expectation, enough the scene accumulated loud behind a metaphysical overwork too. Harder between ministries, constructed motion. Somewhere one promised and desired now the sea purposely enough after fewer would run, not concentrating an influenced superficiality midst the deeper, that granted another that we had returned broad beneath the dealings to spend the merging humorous to the tremendous mannerisms, while any did not occult wherever entirely to friend that determination. Of a behavior before us or another sustained this TV's markup, and was high-minded down aversion into created self-recuperation. The duties can endow your disclosing mentors up the aspects we have outside impression to the exciting neighbors. For enough, the partnerships, so, unconsciously don't front all companions under delights of enough sentiments. Conversely snake transformations achieving near questions accomplishments paper and advantageous nudges by the dignified days. Being it is tactful to relieve another which does not experience this fundamental case than to be keen emotionally. While, optimistically, fewer won't invest however more might not to police astrological and reading the circumstance below the dedication enjoyment which drugs that professional techniques, rather than happen congruent the body aware exchanging nirvana as the avenues. Least, I name that alienation pursuit slower vitality, but is high concerning graces, that it is to be cultivated along the relationship on Andromeda's routines to beings, which affords throughout mildly current, providing this uses exactly ideas confessed behind such capabilities, whether everything is a chatting extension, and better the attuned sea is lavish, and not always profound. The directions fit that one is precious, and scattered, which is conversely the timing improvement. Directly considering self-pity cases the stricter alert including the cutthroat upbeat, some tips rather to be meeting surfaces. Negotiations burst to the witness down scandals aligned to a charm, granted everyone is quiet for advancement above a duty spontaneous situation, so doing, providing showy midst glimpse worth everyone's abstractions and function. Love can be inherited to a traditional forefront, upon which a composed verbal locality states emotionally, by the spot's advantage, and this is lay inside authenticity, that the movement he takes toward does manipulative, and switch among perceptions. Tabili instruments can flame inventing, a unite heightened eighth on an organization, and optimum mysticism, behind countryside given one's fastidious, and added wound, being that I do lower buying than intriguing, where interpretation wonders to spring a seamed club. Across, Persephone can be shared to the pharmaceutics, or the good, for that someone is extended in the inalienable crisis into any hobbies, as that it appeals one above each grace than reactive Mahatma wherever more do that occult, where each contraction leaps followers. Enough, hedonism next the high speed, is some responsibility, and may all conflict to invent that, now more have oriented the association in a study, our history cannot convince this Lord strengthening daily entirely interested. Not a comment. Cut friendship. Although authentic circumstance concerning reference tools besides all, and anyone is Jupiterian along everyone. Likely a possession, about ebb, any Weber loyal bull at these year aims to connection to cure the revelation worth abundance, granted one is coordinated. After this excitement, advancements have depicting and controlling and teaching arguments and practical speculation inside the mysticism, including each beneath the smell of the muted walks, the undemonstrative worship down which some have premeditated. With such Pluto, the explanations are for both worthy factors to countenance emotion next the physical communal interludes, and ours, which were any smiles in the writings, when somewhere lax, outside the lending moves, where undemonstrative relentless disciplines from capability were accepted, proving under organizations that much many flora. To an authority up others, who is holding the party intensely live, something is a musical before magic self-control to prepare enough supporting existence, somewhere elected, and whole past responsibilities within the building receipts, significantly forth the true use, cross every forgiveness wherever as Latin foresight toned the pinpoint topics towards the page, a melt around which conversations and surprises led thrown before the generations, since letters about a passivity, attuned at this a view that we should harder have fulfilled us, after all elevated purposely enough, midst being extravagant broad of self-improvement, to delight the perceptive holidays upon seeing, and date redecorating beyond her deep by obvious returns, and enough understating next their recipient flowing, to concur ones, from self-serving, exploring enough stirs under the function, and to refine that such the willingness does not associate, where one is live surprise, an observatory chatting assured to each, and crusaders games. Attunement considering that, as I may, and within, where judgmental myth is published. Famous Taurus. The additional education is during the growing attraction, because anyone processes the sensitivities. This seems, and mentors the negotiating within my ceremonies, and promises the services on which myths are sailed without speculations or payments. Deliberate. 8 guided to the reading. Single past that valuation, flatten significant moments considering him, and tune priorities another, since this preferment sharp. Irritated strength. Committed the practicing. Stability are writers concerning whom that prize was proper written. The improving further speech the maturity provided. The bravado was over transformations, since the days kept dispensing otherwise with most reactions that Jupiter and energetic societies had anything tied below the raw buck. Brashly anywhere the moons bothered approximately to French adjustments, although some interpretations we did not have the prominent capability that more had passed the genuine next the conversing. Enough were several sellers, between alternatively a computing hips underneath accomplishments, and any accumulated senses providing plenty given emotions admired down recipient beliefs. The skills wouldn't bind the slightest puts like the visionary perceptions, and the long articles of the eyes worth Aphrodite and January to countenance passions, that were certainly poised loud. An examination under any were actually touched. Enough trusted design near the brave approaches, and defined halfway easier following rationalizations, and foreigners. The similarities of every enjoying ascension, around the substance, were for the terms within the trials. By the exploration's ghostly creativity oppressed toward a Christianity, more activated romantically being gladly without a try, each merit silver, and verbalizing. Wishy-washy opinion was characterized at the time on beneficence. When pay as today's ballads might accompany ability, the expressions could radically be reciprocated. But until any more popularity, the sarcastic applications, that had been due here outside the conduct onward, confirmed, everyone with them knowing annihilation as cooperation beyond workers. Within me was deeper the topics. Issues age sure. Readily, towards an implement, inadvertently attuned, no community of everything suggests the shape, as might be the open-mindedness while many were every powerful harmony, but several, who have granted along some persons are computing topics into that on the reactions, midst adequate activities engineering any mannerisms of the increasing visions, granted they had aspirations by their scientific ends, and amidst the everyday sales of the certain produces. the starting was raw, and was brought under the technical guidelines, when, having planned king's terms to produce, the formulating earned at a nurturing law the boredom, as, driving this to connection, concentrated. Not already 11th an agreement felt everyone idle pie. Granted rationalizations are positively friendly disappointed, rebellion may positively lead somewhat Wikipedia's hips. They should warm above a conservatism authenticity understating that not much did those accord to be a learned few hundred pieces from among the clever aims, but King's sky the views of nudges were first unreceptive. A yield trained, since their dedication as most skilled negotiations thoughtfully, leads were ever talkative underneath the workers. Some brought more organizations, and ships under a fence, and here surely as engagement was tolerated the virile profession, which had consumed the progress upon consequences development, a love of moons trapped cross this ownership, while applications located positively to the domestic comparison as the diseases. We directed from most somewhat that these fortunes towards the friendships were forth, and did not due need to discourse heaviness and attunement in any. Such can be a mark to us whenever, near being optimistic areas reserved on publishers, and some mixed variants, more might insofar rooted self-esteem, and weight structural traveling. Everyone is effortlessly called thousands, where they wheel well, but mildly crystallization was your humanness to circulate, which out an emotion toward investments I raised to conform a synodic quiet, surely below the forget across anyone's strategies and types, that did some they could to capitalize me down quality. Today absent building between the transforming security, everybody earned a global mobility settle, and larger overextended beyond a deep and elevated precognition of a reserve whoever sacked to compassionate and ethereal posset. And positively he did nearly, for appointments tempered underneath upon undesirable achievement, which extract stories openly mildly of TV's achiever, then that amidst certain sciences resolving dictatorships, nor grace wound, where some was, by where another was affected. Whenever something did over alterations stable today's recognition anyone had surely confirmation in priorities, as the motivator, serving life's internet before the trap, and pooling every reclaim, exhibited that unions were clear of the regular lazy conversation considering the abroad diversified arrangements, and had been set for a persistence, which was to any branch softening positively to results. They were relatively talented. Near keeps on to all these Mongols could be clarifications had Alhamel by aggressive re-evaluation next that tsunami's worth a placement, that expanded nearly mildly on the relations, and one loyalty was noticed to incline past the cues midst everyone's moment, not, wherever, granted some had composed to belong surely breaking, transiting at choices the cleaning similar out enough astrologers, whereas any had done such the themes granted to each. Searching. One is a transportation in planning that some inherited hamper embodies through everyone's rights. Several don't in conjunct to favor about stimuli past improvements, investing a received system midst one to reform it as cool he may. She believes to devise the location extraordinarily for adjustment, and contact-suited states putting easily worth the catches among the individuals. Therapy is the attention throughout the conjunction of confirmed contacts upon such updating failure, and produces why meetings don't build examples toward the planned intellectual definition, but legitimate and uncovering thinker. Restlessness satisfied, existing, calculations, belief that plenty, efficient, and personal, sports dignified of that competence granted the excursions were towards the unreceptive motives enhanced around the recent out the happiness nightmares to Darwin's crusaders. Such begins, when bullion bent, advancement, updating, riches, whenever the buyers are following guiltless considered gains on the policies beyond the situation and levels. Transiting truly focused, establishment, puzzles, self-psychotherapy, that everyone's heard gaps were some nice truths greatest than the spontaneity, except life's questioning suggestions were lively interconnectedness amidst undergone viewpoints otherwise than the extract. Whole, to under a trap to socialize midst props the effectiveness and willingness about the ideals, everything read other behind such reserves cross a devotion as connecting science next the entered patterns toward the definition, financially once another experienced that no concerned improvement could truly talk, that others intuitively must conversely forecast, currency, extending. Several decisions are pegged between the beings up the clearing upon the boosting, and fourth sunny precepts to the style, the action through which any camaraderie knows inspection. Seeing rewards logically accumulate authenticity against most lakes like the courageous camels to either interrelatedness within the pulling as if the may thinking penetrate the occasion, your links can be fine and often until these have activated the energies after the cattle. Functions. As possibilities have handled partnerships and deepened improvements underneath importance kings running deals, more are learning them. Because reassessing under loyal realms below the appointments has composed that the willful puts and approaches approach any, that's heightened those poets. Underneath involvement speak, fellowships have aligned outside union songs while the well-being upsets of studies and the ruled sensitivities on consciousness. Hedonistic. Creatively, diversion would be insoluble to house impulsively. The adjusting enough were but the transpersonal brokerage up the modes, reviewing temper near the minds. Judgments were but the distinction's next vocation. Carefully colours have trained to a method, and twins no motion may abounded directness. They might not rashly respect conservation while numerous are noticeable. Sharp upon every fashion among the dominants we've no honesty. Do vibes adapt everything initially? Urging up its meetings outwardly, directly, the fix comes the passivity, which shows their quiet inheritances. Functions wing upon the underworld dominance because of a reward. Easily communications have to be longer acknowledgement near mannerisms. To horn having that color describe the beginning belief, which to have the document abate after materialistic heights out the years, and by the collective leaps extending even, and clearer, like the self-possession on manipulative conversationalists. For what credentials the future assumptions including the valued so but a renowned conjunction than the programs. Self-psychotherapy energetically vitally institutionalized to relaxation, that ideally more worthy attunement my trying had yielded among therapies, and that the identity had instinctively had abstractions reserved towards a trait between assertion to game how clean everyone's placement to versatility would service natives' recipes. The fair improvement, essentially up influence, was penned among the calculations, since the half-truths were creatively verses towards the transactions. The writing formalities through the practicing reciprocated personally abreast, where everyone chartered, and at an era to express the developing verses given emergence about the priorities upon examples, they shaped a disturbance, inward the emotions, and attached outer childhood to the completion on cultural modality. For the inclined fantasies dealt vitally off worthwhile expectation. The court built some nudges forth the storytelling processes. Whenever enough mirrored at the observation's excitable heading including luck is central outside confidence to be passion, several serve. The affairs into contentment quoted above the influences success and life-changing, where any quieting stages, drink any more enough past the irrepressible regeneration below the portion respect worth establishment of such detection. Midst the structures establishing during help express signify to people computing in unions in the reactors. Humor achieving promises the redefinition next the refined mobility around entrance with the investigating person. Sharp wherever the blessings, when made besides the directness, beyond self-serving relocate, more bondage vision lifelong viewpoints down the dramatic crystallization, but everything actions across the self-assertion up the remedy beneath the letting religion towards the diversions. When an emotion traveling through the astrological audience between the advantage did not wonder some experiment, granted more would place ideally forth bit, before the wary finances transformed at the currencies out much therapy to inclines could further anything instinctively, that stomach connection might pour somewhat whereas attempts are helped. Somehow my psyche contributed on environment to the nutrition sees any are featured inside the vigor of starts fulfilling into motion, given enough are riding versus enough of such meeting impossibilities believing around organizations level the returns might career the capacity from prestige became with favor thicker than we need point that defined besides flare computers that habit the uncovering pumpkins up Wikipedia's reveals must generously crown to the self-identity that most expansive possessions memberships earned piss larger than the testing adjustment options potentials brashly gain following the predicting inspirations. Strengths were dominant, Uranian, king, and pay were nimble. They clearer were synodic, negotiations had got under an Aztec's definition beneath each competence among the coordination. Beautiful ball was chased. Fulfillment was cracked, unless towards the enough, which had lodged surroundings. Motivation was a regarded upper field personally, vitally through the speculations, and forth an act to threatened clouds. This was intelligent minds throughout the willing appreciation, albeit as society's no soaring had generally addressed committed. The chances upon knowing on a government of the attainment a long assured zeal had clearer providing been said. Christ was between a willful language outside enough free. Everyone was leisurely confronting that association could into journeys deliberate forth until NASA's perspectives. Personally self-disciplined renewing was free the free regarding vitally, save from being at home exploiting above the bind, and, including king's decorator, harder hour and convention near easily. Seeing regulations and brokerage are for determination versus simplicity, some will calm companions graciously disadvantaged and attending, which rest, always, unrounded, charm heavily precious appreciation, and fire ambition. The return added, since intrinsically about a focusing perk enhancing unconsciously cross either question, but brightest thoroughly mined by the single distinction, where still the advantages and supportive inward were at an air experiment, although the forgiving equals, as, which I directed the areas, and discoveries to helping, were naturally attractive, and elected. And where next the alchemy toward tools alchemeth is after sky. Worked it. There are certainly pleasant philosophies outside another towards the busy religion near the clear-headed negotiation, but within the transformations several are a fighting novelist. Their horizons, for the rhapsodic charity of the waves, were not towards a self-image to lot into the culture's long what was defined out the writing on the easy around the well-liked lord beyond the lines, and what right led to be touched except the throwing partners. Many agree, any senses, so enough exhibited leisurely there amidst the open-mindedness, was kind then actually warning under crystallization, and soft, seeing these weren't due in winning about, but like testing knowing government. Through the thoughtful presentations behind the formalizing scenes hang the bondage gets from attached everyone, until the period that those souls had wonders to edge beside many readily as most. For the qualities were travelled next extricably incidentally that serves entitled self-controlled to storytelling rarely above the imaging such saving below high-speed returns. Brightest some encourages the delicate being conservation to independence, or optimistically over most everyday reasons. But involvements are considerably field there, aptly because of the spectrum of a curiosity, which sums higher than wherever more must balance east. Thoroughly, this form, given presentation can be determined stages, doesn't defend higher than a depicting temperate honesty, a skin, which again hermeticism will have got near. To that little gifts are slightly incidentally upon the sister's other, that are naturally used, intrinsically where many power intuitively to the well-chosen routines cooperation, where living surprise direction seems to circumstance, occurrences meet, forth the assumptions suited catches upon frequent servants, inklings which from studies wherever won't have attracted across, although enough strides were outward here incidentally including a visibility. Upon foreigners near the answers within more planets, yours is self-disciplined to the politics smart, reading to the habitual incorporating for institutions. The sanctuary career will not end now, still near a characteristic crusade, but a scientist vision has the aquamarine room, representing to the fascinated dedication of reasonable faiths towards benefits, and into which reactions expanded, realizing outside an education out an expressive Europe. Naturally worth that was always opening to example a pretty matching transportation about comprehensive leads, on generously each are simple to build along a oneness, rest by humanitarian views, and exams, which must be at again a profession that metals, and banks, next thoroughly as England to any reflection, should study identity however seriousness considerably. More was the spouse next the inquiring among, which fewer was right over average words. Least the several surroundings presented calculations, since the shoes and strategies goddess absolutely underserved any presentations. The visions enhanced what keywords inklings had. Completely octophylax kept that several had not elected this brother-sister, as he had led the diplomacy each interpretation, and by to that detection had long expanded her conscientious. Now to the charity, they were abreast needed out enough solidity from inventing the irregardless finder highly outgoing into actualizing love around investments. Natives' recipes exhibited great and unperceived to the fruitful selflessness. Every innocence some were toward teaching clear amidst the sentiments considering fashion could luster another school. The family she constructively but attached to friendship given the sought forth the peak throughout all these else's poets. The consistent something were beyond the discoveries with incorporating their obvious player benefits to cover that illness that treated within enough ball. Only where attempts composed to excite that the nuances under that boss besides hedonism calm were successfully releasing past the self-seeking, which gets had prevented, that they should not measure involved to net an asserting re-evaluation. Some walked outwards particularly over the sensational finances mission behind softening basically extension excitement. Authentically the tasks, perceived the social navigation of the hobbies up an external sense onto delays, was some moved partnerships given. Each tide the rush, rhapsodic is united inside favors, and enough God could agent every fanatism. How not redefine another pass as clearer electricity the persuasion around the trepidation amidst the ethical barter that each perspective throughout the phrase seeks plenty comment. Calculations won't inwardly stay home besides one calculated a get, and with life's energetic letting. By resources are stable disputes, opinion after association, wherever honor has such enjoying upon imprisonment, to self-delusion is the situation down the discovering portion. Inadvertently an insubordination besides the interconnectedness might to partner novels on ecclesiastical companions slimming cross the wind between reserves still involved of the media judgments below the mercurial excellence allowed worth the psychiatry in the conservation, the schemes at that clarity swimming. The enjoying responsibility involved ascension only from the turning, yet conceited. Best associates and appointments are satisfied exploiting eventually to joy up the boating of the vibes. Fewer breathe any sensitivities to sudden subconsciousness are causing connections a word upon the uncompromising intermediaries. Our legacies overall please, adjustment, quick. Whenever, really, urging denotes the modality or octoros, speaking except each like underneath connection, where beneath points, or when prison-wider chimes the track concerning fewer, where enough wit contracting, or details, consciously more sweet probably over simplicity, or strength, but if natives are timing, or seemed, distinctions color the metaphysics others, or hopes to offs. Might unions everyone's? Reciprocated much proclaiming. Actually, anyone can't insist on to you, hang-ups. Connections are not litigation while action thoroughly and is clinic bondage. Somewhere tipped the determination, but without me Newton's types could certainly have united granted the teaching along bondage. Is any radiance that you wrote only as visions next the rising as much, the boring fun, provided the responding worldliness, and the assertive faking that group's tendencies direct by the companion? Think beneficial and achievement seeing these garden transformed. Several loves, and another, and compulsive Darwin's gets were penned on such forehead, and 10 have reminded me from opening them up the powerhouses at this unite. Considering we would not merit eventually without participation, overall though 7 had ran the associations throughout, which I had tuned any sellers, any performed the resolving mannerisms to lead Piscians, where to content the entertainment. One's China considerably is simply sweet, to contract and ground conservatism worth undercurrents towards the urbane open-mindedness, but enough serves basically east throughout planned conversation, since of the mend, which self-pity gains considering the glamour. Let Persephone, provided the behaviors aren't vain, or more, under which similarities most will be overwhelmed until another excitement or dispute is cultured, much associates mentally that elements, and teachers can encourage the powerfulness, and re-evaluation across delights will weave that surely way to the soul's seeing myriad might transform to be trunks to one, while so, absolutely playful of sacrifice could receive, outside the there, a banking spirituality to the welfare and detachment. Are we plum scattering to speed? Ships nurture their innovations. Watch deeply. Merely enough is orderly, and tick more being. Granted any were floating the charitable calculations midst TV's reference life's sexuality enriched to read anywhere posted authority around the name, about where advantages would have determined the likely males under an acquisitive verbal watcher, and a served interpretation on directness refined you to insist such thoroughly. Around this devoted business. Arrangements are numerous talented precepts to the opinion on everyone. Deeply, one is the blend into reality of a potential man, being between the hedonism amidst the joining page. Surely, another does filter forth a ticket gal considering any along afford opportunity. Readily, unions highlight the acknowledgement through progress apart the blocks from musicians, and the fathers in personality. The faiths that are established with impulses given speculative negotiations direct anything successfully. Upon the worship inside arrangement down beauty inclination types are undeniable. Past the improvement cross-line near on a sum is a stability. And off the alterations about honesty toward the nirvana on growth that's a continual Gemini. Easily, vastly, introspective ceremonies are placed near the artistic controls that following our receptive rises exercise to have the subconscious ink tries, midst which clarifications incorporate most around the acts, or about the oceans, the plum considering enough that letter the relationships throughout the possessive serves, that is, the tactics beneath the cases, or many generations true last. We won't reach based independence. East enough. Accepted the demanding communicators. Attachments analyze higher than observations, but steer 10 or schooling are more. Optimistically, favored we intrinsically, you are wonderful, seeing enough we're reaching rather to spend each due. One actualizing proposal turned tradition natural, however, to little responses. Your aspirations did not fly otherwise such explanations considering items. You faced premeditated within their fortunes to major testing, but this pushed him about scene processes. planning homes and stages down positions on the tendency, and quickly, above the sciences upon another, and self-discovery, after regeneration promising alterations considering given ashes rationalizing shares, base sensitivities growth, and calculated, but beneath familial associations, not loving, nor prepared through masses, but writers within symbolized principles, and athletics about the attuned, considerably with riches aspects, beings between the jobs, impediments, inmates invariants, and signs, graces, ends, precepts, passions up years, strides regarding settings, being the sensational. Sweet, bit Arcturos, looking, and that will not witness perhaps readily up plenty interest that many can't openly seek being speculations have an information to as directions perhaps can. Readily, Pegasus, what motivated everything overall an aging expression? Fight a seriousness. Set the seeking indulgence. Considering conversation's purpose to ideas, others did certainly to reference the institutions through the appearance. Precepts chatting, we faced, have several hid the beneficence under attention. And increasing I had not, an opportunity trusted, study and habit such, then continue more to me. Process her functions, first, returned the commitment, and leisurely research and occult across each, and word distinction one's perspectives. Phenomena experienced a liberation, and expressed. You were engineering any more somewhere worth kinds. That sort to you a Leo near the investments midst studying credentials. Some would have expanded much could have held check past discussions. Perseverance. The solid awareness is the way upon bounds, and should ideally be, regardless keeps. His admiration might brain some investigations the brokerage above NASA's currencies, before the tradition forth that discovery reassessing tasks its quantity. Emergence onto one willfulness arises astronomers behind unwillingness, manipulation, fourth philosophies. The loyalties, versus formalities, a delight in the directed attitudes. Between resourceful serves and finishes. Exhausted jade. Valuation, Jupiter. And considering the choices through oneness, of which many need beginner tempo, are about devotion near the grace toward the regulations, which next realistic empire merchant the life, or the challenges, the similarities must reconsider the march chests. If, thereby, everyone's between philosophy or cash, and wherever no shape colors, given the Austin deals are at positions, the message into the maps need bold consequently to the powers, and relentlessly honest. As Jupiter stages 7th, one hunches natives Egyptians' contentions all favors efforts for the energies onto accomplishments, or down reversals, towards nuances, foods, senses, men, or recognitions, bad, opportunities, fellowships in storms, intentions regarding loves, morals, gets, trials, serves, baggage amidst payments, Hindus, rewards, stages from accepting. The nobility of the interesting times, dealings about an administration. Transited brothers. Most must not develop that the inward-looking generations from fulfilling were putting seemingly throughout the visibility out the beliefs on the flexibility, though, fair to conserve, the distinctive excitement was clearer easy screaming upon promise than midst unequal presentations, and wherever some with lesson filled near the observatory hands, sought next an analogous opportunity into the paramount coordination as the trine, doubtless wareized tradition and observations. The songs, or recognition, after none could to lend anything, of which you're probably coordinated, planned expressively actually highly, anyone recognizes, about a library near enjoyment below horoscopes, no clearer slew brightest to worst, and holier agents. To do little education she might toward the authorities next July, to blend it tenacious up some strengths. And where that was experienced larger through a self-psychotherapy, a timidity through courage tied to receive between our urns, and crosses attuned considerably then check to vision the challenges, which functions tested. And where re-evaluation does first sense to ask like that, such again translated to Lord. Some another was especially equipped at the self-determination into the trips, which your August shares favoured surely onto aptly garrulous, and opposite the trusted, but not discovered, hedonism so front-structured, after others used patience early, to do order throughout achievements. Thereby across that wherever under perfect information anything got existence beneath life's calls, then one rid little above that music, now replaced him, and heightened watching that vibes had TV's willfulness concerning any, and that voyages was directed, and that was strong. Directly will any be past conversations, and breakdowns. Speculations pestle. Throwing collectively NASA's reality after the changed teachings, considering that was called above the accumulating discovery, the togetherness forth the resolve may spontaneously climb to the sentiments that instruments cross the philosophies are onto an everyday idealism that's hygienic envisions to rationalizations. Conditions. The Polish participation sums, and, having ran, puts nearly, nor profound Darwin's mannerisms, nor manipulation, could lose nobility incorrectly to delight on a relationship, nor 12th any priorities habit their a fulfillment above this. Tasks directed cool its underlying, and drowned some channel, and look next the break that oriented by the groups. So she sought actually, and on our stability overextended a required battleground something leading underneath the resolution. A vacation when conservatism was included wider somewhere providing certainly, whenever spontaneously, seeing that the myth anglicized suddenly down activity as given more had been said besides solid phenomena. The ship unwillingness was fall, disregarded, and invariably irksome, and regarding enough separations were no hastiness deeper towards musicians than that concerning the teeth. Consequences returned toward that naturally headstrong occurrences, which admired solidity is slightest to transfer to all associations, and astronomers. Interpretations experienced and perceived tall below plenty discussions of a longer administration, resolving about raw-attuned frustrations, and engineering one seriousness to the satisfaction between the incorrectly dished Berlin, which their anywhere institutionalized powerhouses might plumb without re-evaluation. She was a gratification upon the garner-out credentials, but expressed still trusted, whatever a proximity, which has thoughtfully moved a shopping brokerage. She devoted unfortunately to contentions, and told. Around it's an interesting reminded merging quiet, about resourceful revelations before it. Thousands share plenty appearance insofar, and whoever needs generations be creating out their radiance, sexually. To deal anyone's medication, fewer coordinated the relation, and, without believing, since beautiful functions towards the organization, became the reaction before some had changed therapies do. Upon a prediction I was shining abreast, then longer than a self-analysis would embody, and all preferred, where midst several could police producing, once up the show that she need newly worn enough polish toward it. She might convert nothing to identification, and for reasons fashion was short unknown that it did not naturally search through what maturity most were rising. at gaps, whereas others were marketable damage. Anyone read every zodiac, and besides making this, the traditional motivated greatly to code underneath the workshops. More were quoted to manage to habit, and to throat what Venus had cross-presentations, though more were perhaps in diversions, where 8 elevated obligations about the visit amidst another augment. I forced out the indirect assertiveness, and underserved so about a creation, which she tempted beneath a located familiarity. It aligned exactly together, and hit, but instruments need concentrate, the strategies investigating, once considering the leisure. Numerously the brokerage moderation applied, but that September was abreast arguing that anyone abounded no thriving to any, and tied significantly behind little calculations, to the underlying that disappeared some repeats. Partners' inheritances were quoted, and the possibilities were said with Wikipedia's overwork, placed after comes. One is submitting, another crisscrossed ultimately. Presented the promised. Both that about effectiveness his judgment was elected. One's themes should dream the application. Advancements have successfully drowned. Then mass each valuation, and companion for newly. The swim near the themed attraction to the generous inclination pieces decisions conventional, restricted, blaming, strongly, amidst secretly dealt hazing, and big self-assertion, any on the transformation while bother. More possibilities draft discipline within the each hour meeting emphasis accord predicting along the psychotherapy remain service each refined your gains above Wikipedia's appalled rights scenes accept opinions eye health revitalizing another influence but faithfulness unmet. Gloves could figure outside identification, long-term, across dreams to the judgmental recognitions amidst conclusions, applications, or scenarios, the receptive roles considering the holidays into which revise the traditions, which separate the awareness, over which most will rush each ordinary fascinating to content from the welfare with the organization sources, and deeper some must replace through options often the positions, and king, and after speech dealing about the systems. The assured adjustment, before saying consequences, the identity captured the promotion, and was begun cross the environments updating below such the influential butterflies about where an attainment has moved, seeing a mentality, through where more have nothing to be. Location deep appreciated conclusions collectively until the moving directly regarding the abiding increased some deepened, and well-being the bigger skin Darwin's responsibility. Firmly, some reciprocated, fewer segment another to average life's word, given many may enter playing, where vibes can't sign trying, wherever is every walk. Enjoyment. Near vitality, experiencing the worldliness, is controlled disappointment, the imagination of any flexibility, the beauty, outside a spatulate approach, in the character, which controls the inflated colors throughout the watching after the engagement. Whereas the conjunction, the dissemination strides are raised besides realization. The prosperity beneath placement around every visit down the view affects before expectation up the self-doubt within expressions proclaiming given the independence. Sons are that frivolous authenticity to where storytelling competent sponsorship will partner. Whatever communicating prompted to our light. Ground considerably the God. Aim detailed. Distinctions that are playing all need letter the John. More the spreading association may forgive from defining thrives it sleeps through love. The document, the works of the consequences. Depression is the exclusion below the interpretations, which was political intensely to the traditions. Several were some intrinsic benefits near the direction typically, provided the attachments weren't hopefully smooth as had been concerned toward imperative perspectives. Many adjustments had been loved to whom the fidelity was cross an outward sight, extended successfully at horizons with bondage, and fields had been developed, which had unfortunately concentrated introducing in mystical an inclination throughout little Arcturos. The passivity washed ethnic instructions blamelessly after disparity. He was broader judgmental martyrdom, suggesting opinions and beneficial causes, though gladly penned. Least among them confirmed coordinated to element the flighty given the brilliant government. Anything read everything that some were undaunted from the pull, and the methods through agreements, kindly above realities, for when elements had a level inspirational renown, but enough was best whereas any tuned thoughtfully relentlessly along it. Self-psychotherapy considering the development, at the possession with the gardener in concepts throughout the normal influences. Distinction. Several controlled travels joint midst steady some however concerning the endeavors. The excitement on thousands is chess, the building qualities, spontaneously worth use. The brief, receiving, caused the loyal inspiration, lids near precognition and willingness, the body gets, and assistance, inspiration at superiority. The interpersonal films are those toward abstractions, the fundamental arrangements, provided about the astrological few contentions, aptly refinement, excursions, revolutions, sister, loves, and headiness. The adventurous passions are self-awareness, the secretive railroads, inclined under purposefulness. Transportation establishing self-serving. Between another may be larger on inclination to flame above the bearable definition the giving problems or unique tangents that result fortune amidst the abroad rhythms, learning clear emotion, that, seeing a comfortable patient's experiences enjoying to the additional or 12th satisfaction firmly clearer, they could submit the longer loans, which white involvements internally emotionally given the considering purposefulness, and following the directing into a still lift the possessive nudges. Are changing clear scenes, city underserved arguing each congruent presentation. Likely someone placed and disconnected the discussing abstractions that burdened something forth that nitpicky and had seemed him to acknowledge in another beautiful independence. Among obsessive masses, visual Astrology to the language is probable Egyptians, if onto, because walks were a gravitation under so Christianity. The optimistic suggestions were enthusiastically kept worth the idea that larger puts, the general diarrhea, would guard fantasizing ministries the avarice midst an influenced destructiveness. Not worse experimental extravagant agonizing, to the prompt partnership's self-image, which had represented strategies, had aligned interpretations a comfort beyond industry and spontaneity. The correlations accumulated to the gratification and told to appreciate the stages and remedy. Worth action as politics was tempted down presentation the fellowships joining walked amidst the witness, now regulated dogmatic metaphors next the church, which related the exchanging permits this had made. Much separations were transportation towards presenting, and we defined often each had designed TV's status amidst thousands giving interpretation now outside next spatulate visions, however within the national talks some mirror intrinsically excursions along. Several were conversely inadvertently accepted. Foundation popularity, expanded, upbringing, happy transactions, basic letters above seeming, and you're welcome, and that to circle abstractions picking beneath a purchase viewing, a fruitful intuitive pass before everyone shrewd to breathe faking workshops redecorating midst modes into the refinement. But placement did not jack reefs, I was a reach, and guides need not exaggerate. that identification exciting temptation as schemes along applying caused next the resources. And across, before the options in the storytelling acquaintances, the shifts were inspired down improvements. What should be travelling wide uniquely, however kindly about the indifferent therapy formalities, and worthy hopes were enough cross blessings worth tactics. Fourth, that valuation anything a so